copy that. All right, so let me just take a moment to fix up my camera a little bit. And then we will get started here. So, okay. So I thought, while we wait for people to come in and choose a deck and ask some questions, we might do engage in a little practice that I used to do forever ago, but I kind of fell out of a bit. But basically, how I'm going to start today's live, since it is Mercury's day, I'm going to ask specifically a question for Mercury, I guess. We're going to find what Mercury has to say for us today and start off that way. And then I'll be taking any questions that anybody has or any readings or anything like that. So if you have a specific deck you'd like me to use when it comes time for that, just drop it in the comments, let me know. For now, I'm going to go with the Children of Ostara because I'm in the middle of finishing up my Patreon horoscopes, and this is the deck that I'm using for that month. I try to switch it up, but so it's kind of just however the spirit calls. So it is Mercury's day, and it is Jupiter's hour, currently as I am doing this live. Ooh, so we want messages from Mercury in regards to Jupiterian matters, right? What does Mercury have to say in his day, Jupiter's hour? What we got going on? It's our message from Mercury. And yes, we have a request for the Nameless One, so perfect. After I'm done with Mercury's message, we'll move on to the Nameless One, and we'll ask your specific question. Okay, great. So Mercury says, Four of Wands reversed, the Queen of Wands reversed, and Strength upright. So this is so funny because literally this happens almost every time. If there's a holiday coming up, like there is the 4th of July, which some may or may not consider a holiday, but whatever, it's celebrated in America by many. I almost always get the four of Wands, and that makes sense. The 4 of Wands typically indicates like celebration, moments to jolt and rejoice and have fun and let loose, right? Go crazy, overindulge. That's essentially what holidays are, right? It's like collective permission to just absolutely lose it for just like a day or two, in whatever capacity that means and is appropriate for each individual. But generally speaking, right, like during, Christmas, 4th of July, Easter, whatever, we all get together with family, we indulge in sweets or tasty food, have feasting, if you will, do entertaining things together, play games, barbecue, whatever it is, depending on the holiday. And it's so funny because there becomes this like societal permission to let go that for some reason puts actually a lot of pressure on people to like perform in a certain way, to celebrate a certain way, to do or to not do certain things. Like we build up these really intense expectations about how to celebrate, how to have fun. And the point is, right, to get together with people you love and celebrate how far you've come in whatever capacity that, you have. And so even holidays like the 4th of July, which it's supposed to be to represent like how far our country has come, to celebrate our values of freedom and of justice and equality for all and individualism and, even capitalism, right? And collectively, we're really struggling actually with these concepts. A lot of us are really feeling like, none of those things are performed by our country in a way that warrants my, unadulterated joy or celebration. And so, this happens with holidays just like in general, right? Every time we have this expectation of what it's supposed to symbolize, what it's supposed to mean, how we're supposed to feel, we start not letting go or letting loose or getting together with people we love. We like get really tense. We build expectations, and then that fosters resentments or disappointments. It can be a very stressful time for a lot of people. So when I get the 4 of Wands reversed, I'm like, well, yes, holidays can be fun, but they can also be really stressful. So I think it's like, just don't put so much pressure on yourself to respond to that stimulus in a certain way. Some people are going to celebrate, are going to go really hard on to the 4th of July, and for many different reasons, right? And a lot of those reasons, you might not personally relate to. Some people are going to go really hard and celebrate because they want the ideal America to show itself, right? Because they want those values to be embraced in ways that are true and authentic and actually applicable to everyone, right? Like I know a lot of people who are very avid protesters who are very patriotic because they love their country and they want it to be better, right? So even though they're not afraid of looking at all of the injustice and corruption that happens, that's why they protest, right? Is to make sure that it doesn't fall victim to that kind of corruptive influence. And so it's sort of bittersweet, right? You love your home, so you want to defend it. You want to defend the principles which theoretically it was founded on. And then, there are people who protest because they really despise the evils and injustices that their country has done. They don't feel an affinity for it, but this is where they are, right? This is their home turf. So everyone has to interact with that in a certain way. And then there are other people who are going to celebrate the 4th of July because, they just genuinely love America. They're really into the propaganda that we're actually the best and that we fall into this, like, I don't know, this beacon of light of justice for everyone. And I don't have much to say about that other than I don't feel that way. There are a lot of things that are like very upsetting about the current state of our country, but that is the holiday that's coming up. Like literally the 4th of July is going to be a thing. People are going to do fireworks. And to be honest, like this 4 of Wands really reminds me that, despite our misgivings with the symbolism or the application of this holiday, at its base, it is still a holiday, which is a time to, get together with the people that mean the most to you, to love them and to celebrate them and to celebrate where you are in this moment in whatever capacity you can. And that's gonna, I think for some people, require a lot of fortitude, right? A lot of strength to kind of look past what something is supposed to be and embrace what it is, warts and all, for all of its flaws. I personally, as somebody who's more introverted, tend to get the 4 of Wands reversed more often than not. Because for me, holidays are always kind of a weird obligatory space where I do want to be with people that I love and celebrate, but I don't know, maybe it's a Virgo 9th house thing, maybe it's a Capricorn rising thing, but I'm very skeptical of like, at once skeptical and at another time, at the same time, kind of reverent towards tradition. I very much like appreciate the idea behind it, but when you really pick at kind of any of these sort of things, it starts to fall apart a little bit, right? A lot of the time. So it can be kind of a tricky space to navigate. The other thing to note about the 4 of Wands is it's the Venus decan of Aries. Aries is like warlike energy, right? It's ruled by Mars. It's the diurnal fire sign of Mars. So it's very, very fast and bold and bright and individualistic and really embodying everything the 4th of July kind of is, right? America likes to see itself as this like huge superpower, this, this thing, this giant monumental thing for justice and freedom and truth. It's going to beat the crap out of evil or whatever. A lot of people are reckoning with the fact that we're not so morally bright as we would like to believe, right? That there are a lot of issues that we're facing currently right now, right? Our president's a tyrant. We like to back genocide. We capitalistically exploit people past a point of return. Like there's so many, not to mention like, ICE deporting actual citizens of our country, right? And I mean, our whole country was founded on this idea of like embracing the immigrant, the tired, the hungry, the poor, giving them a job, allowing them to prosper if they work hard enough. And that dream, that American dream that so many people came here for, or that so many people's ancestors came here for, is suffering some like real reckonings right now. And that's not to say that like all hope is lost or there's nothing good about our country either. I mean, certainly there is. The ability even to protest is a huge boon. Not everybody gets that. But it's not as clear cut as we want to believe. And when we celebrate things, we really want them to just be objectively, purely good, right? So it can become difficult to kind of embrace this sort of, I don't know, complexity, right? Anyway, so the point is though, Aries, right? Aries is very forceful, very warrior-like, very like bold and bright, and I am what I am. And Venus is the lesser benefic. She's about social harmonies, pleasure, love, beauty, attraction. And so Venus's decan of Aries is very much about turning this raw, like huge, very big, bold energy and using it for something that's fun, giving it an outlet, which really is what holidays are for. They're public outlets for indulgence, right? So the 4th of July, as it's coming, whatever your opinions or stances are in the current milieu of America, try to embrace the spirit of the thing if you can, which is like a moment to, set aside angst and anger and resentment and just focus on the things that are worth celebrating, right? And the thing about Aries is it's the first sign of the zodiac. So the thing about Venus ruled decan of Aries, it's the last it's the last decan, the last 10 degrees of this initial of this sign, of this first sign. And so the Four of Wands always represents a celebration, even knowing there's so much more to come. There's so many more obstacles, so many more things that need to be fixed, challenges that need to be overcome. You know, there's always going to be more, right? But you need to take a moment and appreciate where you are and how far you've come and who's beside you. And that's really the nature of holidays, right? It's like drink and be merry, for tomorrow we die, you know? It's when, you know, the wedding, right, is a huge celebration to commemorate the union of two people stepping into this new threshold as like a unit or a pair. But everyone knows marriage is hard, right? The wedding is fun. It's a fun celebration where you let loose and allow yourself to dream up all of the great, wonderful things that are, you know, to come. But you do that because you know it's going to be a really long haul. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be all kinds of obstacles. It's the same with graduation ceremonies, right? So we celebrate, you know, graduating from high school or college, and we say, wow, you've come so far. You did such a great job. You worked so hard. All of that's true. But the kind of unspoken sentiment is, and now you have so much more to go, right? Once you graduate college, you have to enter the workforce. Once you graduate high school, you have to go into your higher education or enter the workforce, right? There's always more. But that kind of makes the need to let loose and celebrate even more important because, you know, there's always going to be more shit coming, right? So you got to blow off some steam in some kind of capacity. And then, yes, the reverse Queen of Wands is like, yeah, there's going to be people with a lot of passionate feelings about this particular holiday in this particular moment. So it's going to be difficult to deal with. And the best way is to take care of yourself, take care of each other, you know, try to embrace what everyone's going through without negating if possible. And if you literally just can't do that, you just don't see eye to eye, then just don't talk with them. You know, focus on you, focus on what you need. It's not going to help anything, right? Particularly with holidays, you know, people drink a lot of the time, or people become really into whatever it is they're doing in their mindset. And if you try to propose something that's, you know, counter to where they're at, it's not usually received very well. You know, typically that's kind of true at the best of times, but it's especially true when people have this like expectation of why we're here, right? You know, like you're together at a family dinner and you try to like bring up the fact like, oh, you know, America's not so great, eh? And then everyone's like, what the hell, man? Why are you trying to like buzz our high or whatever? It doesn't do much but bring conflict. So it's okay to just take a day to just let it go for just a little bit. You know, everyone needs a break. That's kind of what holidays are for. It's like a collective permission to take a break. But this particular one in America anyway, and probably, you know, I don't know what America's actual, I don't want to say like what America's influence is globally because it's huge and oppressive and vague and weird and hard to pin down in a lot of ways. But I imagine that because of current events, you know, the American desire to celebrate the country's foundation and inception might have some hot takes attached to it, right? People even who are not Americans might have some things to say, and I wouldn't blame them, obviously. So, you know, just keep that in mind. People are going to have their hot takes on both extremes, and it's going to be a ride. I personally am not going to be celebrating 4th of July, and I'm not going to be interacting with people who are, because I don't think I can like mentally, emotionally handle it. But that's me, right? And again, like I have very complicated feelings about my country. There are a lot of things about America that I love and I feel are worth celebrating. But it's, you know, it's harder now for me than it was when I was younger. So that's the reality of that. Okay, so that's what Mercury has to say. Mercury's day, Jupiter's hours. As Jupiter says, we're celebrating. Mercury says, I know we have a lot of thoughts about it, but try to be gentle with yourself, right? Try to let it go. Try to be playful with your thoughts if you can, and just know that people are gonna have some hot takes. She's gonna be so mad. You know what I mean? There's gonna be a lot of passionate people with hot takes, that's all. So just prepare for that and put yourself in a position where, you know, you can take care of yourself and you can respond in a way that is best for you. All right, so I'm not dying tomorrow. I have to feed my snakes. Hi, Alicia. Alicia's got like 3 snakes now. Etsy Curry says, this is really great, not from America, but honestly, this is the message I need right now. Oh, that's great. Honest. Yeah. I mean, there's, you know, that's the vibe, right? And also I'm writing the horoscopes for this month, and July's astrology, that's where we're at, right? July. Yes. July's astrology looks not fun. Honestly, it looks just not fun. I don't want to like go too far into it, but we have, so Venus enters Gemini, which is like, yay, okay, that's cool, but then like Uranus enters Gemini like right after, and then Neptune goes retrograde on the 4th, and then Saturn goes retrograde later on, and then we have like Mercury also goes retrograde later. The moon is like somewhat besieged during her full moon kind of a thing. She gets a full moon in Capricorn, which is like her detriment, which is not great. And then she goes over to Aquarius where Pluto is, which is not great. And then she goes over to Pisces where like, she like runs into the North Node. So if you count that, and then she also gets this opposition from Mars and Pisces. So that happens. And then like the sun kind of intervenes. Like he sends a little sextile ray, I think it is, from Cancer at that point. I don't remember if he's in Cancer, if he's in Leo yet. But anyway, so the sun sort of intervenes, but then she like slams right into Saturn and Neptune. And I mean, I don't know, like it's not, I guess, a classical besiegement because the sun does like interfere, but it still feels really unpleasant. And the sun at that time too, it's like, I don't know. It's not the strongest of aspects that you'd want to like intervene in that situation, I think. So I think it's going to be a little difficult. Yeah, because Jupiter will be in Cancer with the sun, which is nice. And it'll be doing kind of a trying thing to the moon in Pisces, but she's going to be like on that North Node, which is amplifying and corruptive. And then she's going to like fly right into Saturn and Neptune. So it just feels like a lot of back-to-back struggles and difficulties. I don't know. I'm like, not looking forward to it. And a lot of this stuff is like weirdly timed, like literally on the 4th, like, which for Americans again is the 4th of July. And on the 4th, we have like, Venus going into Gemini, and then also, let me just pull it up. Yeah, Venus going into Gemini, and then like literally a couple days after on the 7th, Uranus goes into Gemini. But yeah, on the 4th, Venus goes into Gemini and Neptune goes retrograde. Which, outer planets do what they do, like they go retrograde all the time. But because Neptune has been on that fallen Saturn for, a minute, it really feels like being deluded or confused about tyrants or people in power that are like, fallen and impulsive, rash, who think they have authority just because they feel like they should, who break laws. And there's been like this weird Neptunian glamour about it. And then, I don't know, like obviously my specialty is not at all mundane astrology. I don't do world astrology really, but I've definitely felt that presence like in my life. Like literally, oh my gosh. I could tell a story about that. I had a run-in with like an older woman in my neighborhood who was like trying to hog the entire community pool for people that weren't there yet. And I was trying to sit at the table and work so that my kids could also enjoy the community pool and play. And she was like, oh, I have people coming. And I was like, that's cool. I'm not leaving. And then she was like, oh. And then she's like, you know what? You're incredibly rude. That was so rude. And I'm like, I don't see how how defending my right to be in a public space that I also should have access to spend time with my children is rude, or more rude than you trying to take up the entire table for people who aren't here. Like, I'm not sure what makes your needs superior to mine, but like, I'm not moving and you can't make me. And she was like, well, I got here first. And I was like, and so did I. I got here first relative to all these people you're trying to save the space for. And I was like, we can share this space. That's fine. Your friends and family will come and they can like use the whole rest of the table. And like, it's a big table, right? And it's also at a pool, people are going to be like swimming and going on the chairs and doing, scattering as people do at parties. And I was trying to tell her that. She's like, you're so rude, Missy. You're so disrespectful. And I was like, yo, this is a public space. You can't kick me and my family out of a public space because you think you and your family should have priority. I'm sorry, but I'm not doing it. So anyway, situations like that, right? Like, she thinks because she called dibs, she should have a right to reserve an entire public area, but that's not how it works. That's the social, this kind of like social illusion that I should defer to her because she's older, or she got there first, or because she confronted me about it, or because she said something about it. And it's like, yo, my family is just as important as your family. And then I was like, why don't you just move? And then she said, why don't you move to the table with the sun? And I said, well, because I'm working on the computer and I can't see in the sun and I don't want to be in the sun. I want the shade. And why don't you move to the table in the sun? And she's like, well, because I want the shade. And I'm like, exactly, right? So why don't we just share the shade? Like, it's literally a community pool, I'm part of the community. You don't get to just kick me out. But anyway, and also my kids, they're kids. They lose interest in the pool in like 30 minutes. But the point is, right, people who think they have power for made up reasons, who get really emotionally upset when you call them out on the fact that their authority is completely fictional. And I was like, if you want, we can call a higher power. We can, like, what do you want to do? You want to call the HOA? you want to call the cops? Like, like, I don't know. It just was like, anyway. Ultimately, it did get resolved, but just like, I bring that up because I feel like that's such a Saturn in Aries with Neptune, this like idea that like you should have power just, I don't know, because. And I mean, like, even if socially, like, dibs is somewhat respected as being a thing, like, it's a made up thing, The pool rules do not say, no running, no jumping. Also, you must respect dibs. So whatever. Oh, it is so funny. Okay, anyway, that's the kind of energy that Saturn in Aries gives. And when Neptune goes retrograde, sometimes people say that because Neptune is confusing and ambiguous, it's like a sudden moment of clarity or lucidity. And I think that having Neptune, like, disguising this very corrupt Saturnian fallen presence is kind of like easier to deal with in a lot of ways. And so if that is true and it holds that when Neptune goes retrograde, it actually creates clarity instead of vagueness and confusion and imagination and delusion, I think we might start seeing things for how they really are. And I think that might be unpleasant for a lot of people, which doesn't mean that it won't ultimately be for the best. I mean, you have to see what you're dealing with to deal with it. But I think it is going to cause some problems. You know what I mean? Okay, so let's see. Hello, everyone. Let's see. I do feel that, Zia. I'm for my whole childhood, military brat, proudly, as you know, but this isn't the version of America that my family has sacrificed a ton for, the former active duty. Yeah, totally, exactly. Like, I think that, I think people who are really patriotic, who really love their country, like, want it to be genuinely good and not just want to, like, pretend that it's good for the sake of convenience. And I mean, like, I love our troops. I love people who live here. That's why I don't want them to throw their lives away on meaningless bullshit that's just, like, political and not genuinely good or right or true, right? Like, you can argue that there is a purpose for military, right? That all countries have them and they have them for reasons. Conflicts arise and this is just like what happens. And I'm not here to say that that could possibly ever be changed. Maybe it can, maybe it can't. Ideally, yeah, we would all live together in love and peace. Historically, that has been completely not the case. There's no reason to believe it will ever be the case, at least not in our immediate futures. That is the goal. Let's strive for it. But yeah, so like if every country needs to have a military and every military needs to defend itself or whatever, that's fine. Let's not like be weirdly senile and flippant and cruel about how that's used, like let's fight and champion causes that are genuinely good and necessary and not just like weird power grabs or I don't even know. Like, honestly, it's so hard to keep track these days of like what's really going on and where power ultimately is actually being used. And I do think that, at least for the time being, the astrology of Saturn in its fall in Aries, co-present Neptune in Aries, is very much descriptive of like, I don't know where this weird power is going, but it feels bad. Like, it feels like it's being misused or manipulated or being deceived or it's tyrannical or oppressive. Like, those are all the significations of, both Aries as being the martial fire sign and also Saturn as being like restrictive and old and corrupt and senile and all of those things that Saturn can indicate. So I don't know, it sucks, but it makes sense, I guess, that this would be a big issue right now. So there's that. Okay, so does anybody have a specific question? So he says, I don't understand why it feels like everyone is ready to be entitled and aggressive lately. Yeah. I think that's Saturn in Aries with Neptune. That was the point of my story. Like, she's just like a weird old lady who got like, and again, I got my reading for earlier, right, about celebrations. Like, she was really in on this fact about how her family was flying in and she was having a celebration with them. And I was like, well, that's great, but you're at a community pool, so you can have your celebration, but I still get to be here. And it was very obvious to me that she had built these very specific expectations of how it needed to go. And in her mind, she needed to have the entire vicinity to herself. And I'm over here like, girl, that's just not true. It's not true, and it's not possible because you had it at a community pool. If you wanted that, you should have reserved a private space, which is fine. Like, you can be here just like I can be here. You know what I mean? So like, your family and your fun does not supersede my children and their right to have fun in their community pool, right? At the very best, they're equal. They have equal claim to be here. Anyway, but I don't know. I think that's a Saturn and Aries thing too, right? It's like my needs first, actually, because I have power, actually. But then it's like, do you? Do you really? Because you're in fall right now, buddy. I don't know if you have any actual ground to stand on. Anyway, that was my interpretation of that anyway. I literally called my sister and I was like, yo, the really funny thing about that is the chart of that moment with my confrontation with that lady had Aries as the 7th house. It was a Libra rising and it had Aries as the 7th house, you know, with Saturn, with Neptune. So it was literally just me being like, hey, these are the reasons that what you're doing is unreasonable. And then her being like, you're so rude, Missy. And I was like, okay, well, I might be rude, but I'm also objectively right. So call the authorities if you want, you know? Oh, it was so unpleasant. But I was like, you know, I watched recently this Instagram video where this transgender influencer was saying like, hey, we need to practice saying no to people, you know, because if you can't even say no to like very basic things, you know, that you encounter, like that lady at the pool, or I don't know, someone cutting in front of you in line or whatever. If you can't say no and stand up for yourself in these very low stakes situations, how are you going to say no when people come and take your family members, right? Like when ICE comes and like takes members of your community, or when like serious injustices are committed. Like, how can you possibly have the experience, the knowledge, the ability in yourself to say no to that kind of projected authority if you can't even say no to like, you know, casual encounters? So in the back of my mind, I was really thinking about that, and I was like, you know, normally I might just leave or acquiesce or whatever, but like, I don't want to sacrifice my children's ability to have a good time for this lady's delusional power grab. Like, I don't want to tolerate that kind of stuff anymore. And I don't want to be rude about it. Like, I didn't call her names, I didn't like curse her out, but I did say, like, I consistently pointed out the logical fallacies in her arguments. She's like, I get it because I'm here first. And I'm like, well, I'm also here first relative to everyone else who isn't here. So I'm not sure what you're getting at, you know, like dibs is not an official rule. Anyway. Okay, and she didn't even have dibs. Like, the table was empty except for the seat that she occupied. So what even is that? Anyway, it's fine. Her family members came and they filled up the rest of the space, and it was literally a non-issue. Like, they did exactly what I thought they would do, right? They went in the pool, they hung out on the chairs, they kind of like came around the table and then left the table. It was completely fine. I took up like one chair, you know? Anyway, okay, but yeah, I think that's a really good example of Saturn and Aries with Neptune. I mean, literally in the chart at that moment, it was in the 7th house of like the other. We were having like a very direct confrontation. Sometimes the 7th house is also called like the house of known enemies, right? As opposed to the 12th, which is like the house of hidden enemies. And I almost never see it manifested that way, but in the moment, that certainly made sense. And Neptune was there, and we were literally fighting over a body of water. So very cool astrological data-wise. Not so cool to experience, but yeah, really funny. And also, you know, Venus was still in her domicile at that minute, like kind of towards the end of that whole thing. So it's the end of Taurus is difficult because of the fixed star El Ghul. I'm not sure where it was relative to that, but still, it was like Venus ruling the first has more power than Saturn, because Saturn is in his fall and Venus is ruling the first of that chart, which was Libra from Taurus, which is her domicile. So I was like, I have a right to be here. You do not have a right to kick me out. So it was very much like that chart moment was that moment. And I was like, dude, that's really cool, but it kind of fucking sucked. Anyway, so pretty silly. All right, let me go back here. I will stop talking about myself now. I'm calling dibs on everybody's income. Yeah, exactly, Alicia, exactly. If dibs were a literal rule, right before your coworker gets their paycheck, be like, dibs, that's mine now. Oh my God, that's so funny. All your monies are for me, I call dibs. Oh, that's so funny. Neptune in Aries is very sobering, yeah, totally. Let's see here. Gosh, also Venus in the 8th then. Oh, that's true. Oh man, you're so smart. You're so smart, because I really struggle with that quick astrology math. But yes, because it was a because it was a Libra rising that puts Venus in the 8th, and the 8th is literally the house of shared resources, and we were fighting over shared resources. And even though Venus was in the 8th, she was in Taurus, which puts her at the domicile, so again, a more powerful position, but she was in a dark house, so it was like the ability to have a position of authority in an unpleasant moment over shared resources. Like literally that's what happened. So astrology is real. I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, that's so funny. That's a great point. Alicia says, you are not rude. It's not rude at all to go, yeah, nope. Right? Thank you. I didn't think so either. I mean, I think it would be rude if I was being like, you know, if I was like, I'm not leaving, you old hag, like you coot, right? Like if you start calling names or like, I don't know, disrespect somebody's character. Oh, and then she kept going. She's like, well, it's the way you said it was so disrespectful, Missy. And I said, literally, I was like, you know, for somebody who claims to prioritize respect, you're being incredibly disrespectful to me right now by trying to infantize me, make me out to be some small little girl. I'm a grown woman and I have a right to be here. And it's so, and then she was like, oh, sure. Okay. If you're just like that. And I was like, look, it doesn't matter what you say. You can't bully me out of a place I have a right to be. And she's like, oh, bully. That's all how it is with your generation. It's always about bullying. And I was like, ma'am, you were trying to force me to vacate an area I have a right to be in. What would you call that? Like, I don't know. That's very much like high school girl bullying, right? You'd be passive aggressive at first. If somebody doesn't give in immediately, you start calling names, throwing tantrums. Like, it's just so textbook. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know what you want. Just calling it as I see it. Pro tip for Yuzia, by the way, but you know, for people who want to be, I am doing a celebrity all this public space for me. You can rent a non-public space pretty easily these days. Come on. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, if she wanted to, she could have rented like a private space. Okay, I have a question. My doggie has GI issues since she was a puppy, and although I've been working with the vet all this time, it doesn't fully resolve. I'm wondering if the issue can be healed or must be managed. Okay, so I can ask a question for the cards. Okay, so that's the first question we got. So post in the comments if you have anything else you want to know. My dog also has urinary tract issues recently. I wonder if there's something about, I don't know, like, because I know that if you wanted to look at domestic pets, you'd look at the 6th house, but that's probably relative to you and me as individuals. So I'm not sure like what just in general rules pets or domesticated pets, but and it could just be that you and I are just having those issues. We might have a similar chart. But anyway, yeah, I can ask about that. Also, Zia, if you get time, why do people keep giving me snakes? Alicia says. See, I have 3 snakes in this house. Okay, so first we're gonna do a pet day, I guess. So we're gonna ask the Nameless One about the GI issues, and then okay. So if it's possible, can I have the name of your puppy to ask the cards about, and then we'll be like, what's up with those health issues? Let's see. I think this question was for Goofy Oli Noli. Goofy Oli Noli's doggy. Her name is Bailey. Okay, so, all right, her name is Bailey. So, what do you have to say about Bailey's GI issues? What's the general situation as you see it? So we're going to start general and get more specific. So the general issue with Bailey and her GI issues, little puppy. Okay. So general, and then we want to know if it can be treated, if it can be managed. So we're going to say, let's see, how do we get, that's kind of, okay, let's see. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it because it's like if it can be treated or managed. So sometimes with tarot, it's almost more beneficial to ask two separate questions than to be like, is it this one or that one? Unless we want to assign specifics for like what that indicates, like treated versus managed. So I'm going to draw two cards for this. I'm going to say, you know, likelihood of it being treatable, likelihood of it being manageable, and then advice and then outcome. So I think that's how I'm going to do it. So we're going to start with the general situation. Okay, so can it be treated? So what is the likelihood of treatability? Treatability. We'll pull two for that. Okay, versus what is the likelihood of managing, of needing to manage it? Okay. And then we're gonna do some advice for Bailey, advice for how to handle that. Advice, and we're going to do outcome. We're going to do outcome and advice. Okay. All right. So first of all, the situation as we see it, vis-a-vis Bailey's GI issues. Okay. So we have the reversed Six of Swords. So this makes a lot of sense. All right. And first of all, also at the end of this reading, please remind me if I forget. In the Nameless One grimoire, one of the extra sigils commissioned during the Kickstarter was actually for like protecting pets. So I'll go ahead and get that out, and you can just like screenshot that sigil, and you can use that sigil if you'd like as well, because that might help. And I just so happen to have a sigil for for protecting and helping pets. So just remind me. But what we're dealing with here is the Mercury ruled decan of the zodiac sign Aquarius. So Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. We're talking restriction, boundaries, limitations. Also, Saturn rules chronic issues. Typically, like if you see Saturn in the 6th house, for example, it usually denotes like chronic health deterioration or erosion over time, things that need to be managed and are not treatable in general. But we did specific spreads for that. So let's see. This is still an air card. So this is an intellectual space. We're trying to figure out like what is going on here. Is this something we can overcome, or is this something we have to carry with us? So as far as like the question being like the question of how do you see it, and we get the Six of Swords, it's like, okay, there's a problem. You're trying to figure out how you can overcome it, how you can get over it, and you're not sure if you're able to, right? You don't know if you're going to have to do that or not. And yeah, so that is literally the situation. So sometimes I like to do this because it's just nice to get like a clear objective, where are we coming from? What is the starting point here? Sometimes we might think that we know a situation or what's involved, but there's actually something else, or there's something else we're worried about or whatever. So I like to just start with all specific questions as a general, like, how do you see the situation, right? Like, how does the Nameless One see this going down, or like see what's involved? So the Six of Swords makes a lot of sense in this capacity. The Mercury ruled decan of the sign Aquarius is called by the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn the Lord of Science. And literally the point of science is to collect data, to understand the material world, and then to transcend beyond it, or to move beyond it in some way, right? Like to solve a problem. That's the role of invention, the role of science. If you have a river, for example, and you need to get across it because you need, I don't know, whatever's on the other side of that river, you have to, figure out what is the nature of the river, what direction is the current going, where are my supplies, what are they, how do I construct a device that can either help me go across the river or help me bring what is across the river to me. Like it's very much troubleshooting based on the limitations that you're dealt with at any given time, right? So limitations is Saturn, Mercury is invention, innovation, intellect, right? Troubleshooting, figuring things out, the magician archetype. So we're dealing with the limits of what we're able to do and discovering what those are. because it is reversed and it seems like by context, I think you had said your puppy is dealing with these issues for kind of a while. It's seeming like this is something we can't move past. We did also get a Saturn ruling the card, so we're looking at like managing so far, but we'll see what's going on. And also I will say well, maybe we should just get on. So this was the pile for treatability. So we're looking at the likelihood of it being a treatable thing. And we have Justice reversed and the Prophet. So it's interesting to get this card as an oracle card for this specific question. But immediately, I don't know, it's interesting because the scales for Libra, right? It's like, having a reversal off the bat in this context makes me think like, treatability, I don't know, you know, it might be something that's more, that fluctuates or flares up. And so maybe like you can kind of treat it for a while, but it comes back. It could be that your dog has like just a proclivity towards these issues. So even if you technically treat what's going on right now, it might come back again in the future. And again, I say future because we have the Prophet card, things we can see coming. Also like things that we kind of are aware of, right? Special insights we have that maybe not everybody else has. The other thing too is it can sometimes be, okay, so one of the dangers of this particular oracle card is that if it's like reversed, I would say like, oh, maybe you're seeing what you want to see, or you're being like overly hopeful about it, but it's upright. So that makes me think like whatever your intuition is telling you, whatever you kind of see the patterns of what's going on, like it's probably more likely to be true. The reverse justice card is really interesting. So yeah, obviously we get it's not fair. It's not fair that our puppies suffer. Speaking of which, my puppy is right now eating a paper towel. So give me 1 second. Magic, eat this. This is your toy. Eat the toy. Stop it. Okay, sorry. She got bored, so she dragged a paper towel out of my trash can because that's the kind of dog that she is. Anyway, so yeah, so it's looking like even if the actual cause is, and again, because I say like, you got one card reversed and one card upright. So if we're just looking on a basic, like how likely is this to be the case? I would say 2 reversals would be like not likely. I would say 2 uprights would be like, yeah, it's pretty likely. 1 reversed and 1 upright makes me think like, you might be able to treat this specific situation, but it might just be kind of something that reoccurs. I think that might be the case for my dog anyway. And then for managing, we have Temperance reversed and we have the 10 of Swords reversed. Sorry, you can't really see that from the screen. I always got to figure out how to work that. So don't get too caught up with the 10 of Swords here. I always tell people like the 10 of Swords is death and endings because it is a 10. That's the last card. But swords are intellectual, right? They're not physical deaths. They're intellectual deaths. This is the death of thought, the death of wondering endlessly, the death of asking questions over and over and over and over again. Like this is swords, the journey of the swords is the ability of the mind to, you know, come up with a premise, a clear insight in the ace. And then we weigh options in the 2. And then we, you know, figure things out or whatever, you know, et cetera, et cetera. By the time we get to the 9, we have like so many thoughts whirling around in our heads that we just absolutely reach capacity. And then the 10 is here and it's like, okay, enough is enough. I need to make a decision, come to a conclusion. I'm just done thinking about it. So even though the 10 of Swords can be an unpleasant indicator, it's actually a lot more neutral than a lot of people think it is at first glance. It's really just like, we're done with this issue. We're done thinking about it, talking about it, right? It's the death of thought. And I always like to say one of my sort of working like, what do you call them? Like phrases for the 10 of Swords is the death of a question is its answer, right? When clarity is brought, the question is dead. Right? When you know the answer, it's no longer a question. So this is the kind of death that we're dealing with the 10 of Swords. And then we have Temperance reverse. This is interesting because it's another card that is associated with adjustment and moderation. It's definitely giving vibes of like, in combination with this other one, it's like, you can have success treating this particular flare up, but it's something that's gonna probably happen again and again. And again, because they're both reverse cards on the managing, it's like not quite managing, but not quite treating either. So it seems like it's likely that it's just gonna, she might have a reoccurring like onset, right? And I think this makes sense for how the tarot would answer this kind of question, because if we want something treated and the connotation or expectation is like it's gone forever and never comes back, then it can't really give you a full yes, you know, because in the course of a dog's life, it's very likely that something that has happened to them once will happen again, right? Like, if a dog, it's not always the case. And oh, and the other thing too, let me say this. Both justice and temperance on both of these sides are kind of linked to the concept of adjustment. Temperance in particular is making sure not to overindulge in excess or underindulge in deficiency, right? You don't want to cut anything or like excess in anything. It's really trying to find that perfect like synthesized amalgamation that makes two parts stronger than they are by themselves. And then justice is about, figuring out the right amount and scale. And because we're asking a health question about an animal, I would say dietary remediation is going to be necessary to prevent future flare-ups, which is just also common sense, but it is, again, brought up in the tarot by this whole like fluctuating thing. So making sure that she gets a lot of water, temperance literally is dipping the foot in the water. And so having this reversed is like not enough water potentially. Magic. Oh my God. Stop it with the paper towels. Hold on. I gotta move my trash can. 1 second. Miss Magic, use your bowl. It's right there. Anyway, she has all these toys, but she wants to get into my garbage instead. Anyway, so definitely making sure she gets a lot of water, that her food is measured correctly. One thing, because from my personal experience, my dog also has these like urinary tract issues. She's actually on antibiotics right now for it. And I contacted someone that I know who is I contacted a corgi breeder and that I got her from. And I was like, we had a friendly conversation. I don't know, we're not exactly friends. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is she's a corgi breeder. And she also had done some research on it for me. And she told me that excess protein in a diet can actually cause like bladder stones and like urinary GI kind of issues. So I was really surprised to hear that. But I guess that's why it's important to have like a balanced diet, as they say, right? Because too much protein can be a problem, right? So too much of a thing, it gets temperance reverse is very much like go back to the previous card. You're not quite done with it yet. And it's a little bit like we need to be sure that things are fair and balanced. So more water, making sure the protein is right. Also like justice too can be like supplementation, right? With something that is better. I don't know. The breeder recommended using like this cranberry dietary powder stuff that she puts on top of her food. So I'm obviously, okay, like asterisk, I'm not a veterinarian and I'm not a health care professional. So, none of this is that kind of advice. Proceed at your own discretion. But that is what the tarot seems to be indicating, is it's an issue of needing to balance, to moderate, to make adjustments in probably lifestyle, as well as it's likely that this will flare up again in the future, but that can be moderated a bit. So that's what I would say about that. Then we have, we get outcome and advice. Yes. So this is really fun because we have the World and the Seven of Wands. So let me drink some coffee real quick so I don't cough. I love coffee so much. I should, speaking of excess, speaking of too much of a good thing. Anyway, okay. So the World upright again makes me think like, okay, so cyclical, yes, but we are kind of, I don't know. The World is another one of those cards that, like the Ten of Swords, it's in the tarot world, when it is not analyzed, supplemented by astrological insight, I think people tend to take it a little bit more positively than it generally is. It's very neutral, actually. The astrological association of the World is Saturn. And Saturn is the greater malefic. But in the context of the World, it's really like there are material limitations to a thing. As time goes on, right, there is like the death of one thing and the beginning of a new thing. So there are cycles, there's always growth, but it always starts from the reality of the precedent at hand. So what I mean by that is like, the World is kind of like the ground from which the Fool, the nature of spontaneity and, enlightenment and spiritual this and, that whole Fool energy, right? The World is the ground from which the Fool both leaps off of, and then must ultimately land back on, return to. So the ground, the World, is that physical threshold, that barrier. Like, it's true the Fool comes and thinks, oh, infinite potential, infinite possibilities. We can do anything. We can radically change everything. We can make something totally new. And to an extent, that is true. But how much or how far you can go is determined by where you're jumping from, right? What's come before, what you have done. So having the world in like a health related situation, it's like, okay, so whatever is your baseline right now, this is where you're working from. So you can try to leap off as far as you possibly can in the positive direction, make good health changes for puppy and all of this. But we also have to be realistic about like, okay, what comes up will go down, cycles occur, animals like people, they age, they have health problems. It is just part of the world, right? That's part of life, is dealing with the health issues of yourself and people that you love and care about, and puppies too, non-human people as well. So, I think that the world here is about managing expectations, but also like trying to create better and more efficient, more lasting cycles. Saturn is also involved with building things, wanting things to last and stand the test of time, even in the face of our own mortality and ultimate erosion and corruption, right? That's just what happens. Our bodies start out young and youthful, and they grow, and then they wither, and then they die. And it doesn't really matter how good of care you take of your body, in that it won't prevent you from dying someday. But, right, we can make better, more lasting cycles by making healthier, better decisions on a day-by-day basis. So both of those things are true, right? Like you can have a better, longer experience on this world by taking care of your body. But no matter how well you do, how good of a job you do maintaining the flesh, eventually it just has problems. Which again, Saturn's all about problems and restrictions and understanding limitations. And then we have this card, which is funny because it is the sorry, one second. Oh my gosh, my throat is like so itchy. Actually, I think I might be getting allergies now, which my mom has always had really bad allergies, but I never have. But just lately my like throat has been so itchy, but I don't feel sick, and I'm like, oh no, you can get allergies later in life, but no, not me. Like I just gardened before the live, so now my throat is all itchy, and I'm like, ugh, that sucks. I hope I'm not allergic to something I planted. But anyway, I wouldn't. It doesn't matter anyways. I'm not getting rid of my plant babies. So, what I'm trying to say about this is this can be about maintaining and fighting for your boundaries. It can also be about like territorial disputes or ego battles. How do I say this? This is the Mars ruled decan of the zodiac sign Leo, right? Leo is the sun's domicile. It's where you perform your truest, authentic self. The core of everything, radiating outwards, creating the persona of things. I like to think of Leo in a chart as like your stage, right? Like where you are, where you shine the brightest, the area of life that you show off, that is visible to everyone. That's my working interpretation in the chart that I have studied so far. It seems to be true, and generally speaking, people with like a Leo in the 12th house are like have an interesting relationship to being very visible. But anyway, that doesn't matter. The point is, I do find that Leo as a sign in one's chart is a very it's the place in the chart that's prime for the sun, right? And the sun illuminates and shines and makes things clear and gives life and gives the core authentic spiritual element of life, right? The animating life principle. Anyway, so the Mars ruled decan, though, is the ability for that to defend itself, right? To, this kind of God-given right that fire has to just consume and to grow and to be larger, right? That's very martial, taking more and more and more and more, and I'll burn whoever gets in my way. And there is an element of the sun, of the solar aspect, that can absolutely do that. The archetypes of the sun are like the performer and the leader, the king, the sovereign, right? People who are very solar are very visible. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of presence. And part of having that power is the ability to wield it to destroy obstacles, to maintain and defend boundaries. So, and I really like the king. I mean, the sun is so often linked to the king, just like classically, it still is one of its, the king and sometimes father archetype, right? And one of the primary functions of the king, mirrored in the domestic function of the father, is to maintain structure for the kingdom by defending its boundaries, right? Going back into ye olden days, the father of the family, it was his job to protect the family from harm, from threats, to keep it afloat, to nourish it. in a very like material way, you know. And that kind of, that structure is based on the king, right? The king is supposed to be the father of the country, protecting its boundaries, defending its values, fighting on behalf of the people who depend on it. The role of a leader is to be in service of the people that they lead. And at its best, that's what it does. At its worst, it, you know, creates arbitrary battle lines for no reason, and is tyrannical and dominating and just corrupt as all shit. But we're not talking about that right now. The point is though, so this deck in, this card, it's very much about like having the courage to defend yourself and your boundaries, and being very like aggressively like no means no, or like I will do what I need to do with this kind of a thing. So usually when this card appears, this is about maintaining something, really. I mean, Leo is the fixed fire sign. It's about maintaining this kind of life force as much and as long as gloriously as you can. And to do that, I just wrote about this in my horoscopes too. You really need to get the temperature just right, right? Like Leo is supposed to be not like a wildfire, you know, like Sagittarius, not like the spark of gunpowder, like Aries. It's supposed to be like a hearth fire, something that is, you know, like a cultural, you know, back in the days, what was it? Greek, I think. In Greece, they used to do this where they had like one huge communal sacred flame. And that was like the whole thing about like taking the flame and lighting it at the Olympics or something like that. I don't quite remember. But anyway, it's this idea of like having a fire that is constructive and perfectly maintained and not super wild, but also not super powerful only to die, right? Something that can last and endure. Because again, Leo is the fixed sign. So we're concerned with making these things stick. And in this case, right, we're concerned with making health stick. And so that's going to be kind of a consistent adjustment that needs to happen over the course of the life, knowing that like, I'm sure you love your dog. I'm sure you're a great dog owner and you're doing your best, right? And it's hard. Dogs are so difficult. Pets are hard. They oftentimes seem to be intent on doing the things that are not good for them. Like my doggie, she's got these urinary issues, right? And I'm always trying to give her water. And I'm like, girl, why aren't you drinking this? You know, I have to like splash around in it to get her to do it. And my point is, it's difficult to know what they need, to know how much they need, to like do that. So try to go a little easy on yourself. That's my personal overlay. That's not necessarily reflected in the cards because that wasn't a question. But, you know, there are limitations no matter how good of a job you do. And part of this is going to be kind of just realizing that, right? Like anything that is living is going to have issues with health. That's just inevitable. One of the hardest things about being a parent, actually, I didn't think it was going to be so difficult to watch my children just like have a cold or be sick. But no, it is. And I'm like constantly obsessively worrying about their health and their health issues and knowing that they're going to get sick in the future and how bad will it be and will I be able to prevent it? And it's like, dude, I can't even do that for myself. Why would I think I can do that for them? You know, I think pets are a similar issue. It's like we can't stop ourselves from having problems and getting sick, you know, at least not completely. So it's kind of delusional to think that we could stop it for other people. But, you know, but we try our best, right? That's what justice and temperance, you know, we try our best and we mitigate as we can. So overall, I'd say it's somewhat treatable, but also probably will flare up again. So sorry about that. I wish it was completely treatable, but again, not a vet, not a vet, but that is my interpretation of the cards as I see it. So, we want to hear about the snakes, more pet talk. Yeah, this is just a pet kind of day. Let me go up and see if I can read some of these comments. Her name is Bailey. Okay, it's been almost 3 years of tests and medication, and although improved, it doesn't resolve. Yeah, so it's looking like Bailey loves her paper towels too. I know, dude. I cannot get her to stop eating them. I'm like, dude, come on. It's just, that's the way that, it's kids too, actually, right? Like I buy all of these really nice toys for my children, you know, to like enrich their lives, but they just want to play with garbage. They want to play with like old cans and I don't know, paper towels and like spatulas and stuff. And like, it's the same with my dog. I buy her like all this really great, like high quality human grade food and all this stuff. And no, she wants to eat paper towels and dirty diapers. It's like, girl, stop. That's not good for you. Bailey is a golden. Oh, sweet. Da, 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 da. Flare up is the pattern. Yes. Yeah. So that's reflected in the cards. So I think it's probably gonna continue flaring up, unfortunately. No need to, but if there's time, my parents are home these days, and I told them I do astrology. They are very Christian, and I see in their reaction that they are disappointed. Aw. Are they really, or am I just disappointed in myself that I feel I failed them? Yes, totally want to want to answer your question as well. So technically we're at time, but I'm going to answer Alicia's and I'm going to answer yours because I feel like that's a good question. And by the way, if your parents are very Christian and they're disappointed in you for practicing astrology, just know that, like, I mean, literally, astrology is also Christian. I mean, William wrote a book called Christian Astrology, William Lilly, right? One of like the most referenced Renaissance astrologers ever. Like, there's absolutely a way to do astrology and be Christian. You can tell them, like, I'm so impressed and enamored by God's glory. I want to understand his plan. I want to enact his plan for us. Like, there's a way to spin that. Like, I firmly believe that astrology is not like a denominational thing, it's just the cosmos. So if the psychological perspective of a person's interaction with cosmos is Christian, you can absolutely make it Christian because whatever it is everything, right? And so if we want to call that God, and if we want to visualize it as a dude with a beard in the clouds, by all means. I'm an artist. I love visual metaphor. But like, so, I think that if you're really concerned with it and you want to have a conversation with your parents about like the intersection of Christianity and astrology, that's definitely like historically a thing, that exists. Like, I think, and you might want to correct me on this if I'm wrong, but there's some famous Christian landmark that literally has astrology like motifs in it. Is it the Sistine Chapel? I'm gonna look it up, but I know that there's one. Yeah, okay. The Sistine Chapel ceiling, while primarily known for its biblical scenes, also incorporates astrological symbolism, particularly the celestial cartography. Right. So like the signs. So yeah, so literally, like at the most Christian thing of all, there's like astrological paintings, I mean, because it's the cosmos of God, right? It's God's glory, it's his plan, it's his benevolence that he should give us signs in the stars so that we can aspire to live to our best selves, so that we can follow our best manifestations. So, regardless of if you really feel that or not, which is a separate issue, like you might not want to lean into that Christian stuff, that's fine. But it sounds like your parents' approval, or like their disapproval rather, is like injurious to you. It hurts in some way, and there's no reason you should have to suffer that. Like, astrology absolutely can be Christian, so there's nothing intrinsic about that suggests anything else. But also, if it's God's plan, it's God's plan, and that's one of the great things about talking to people of faith, right? There are ways to translate that are very much in line with what they will be receptive to. And true, that can be used to nefarious ends. Hashtag, please don't manipulate people's faith. That's really super awful. It has been done and is just so cliche. But at the same time, like, you're their daughter, they're your parents, you love them, they love you, and this is a common ground by which you can communicate. So, and I always like to say, okay, I get it. I'm a little bit in that gray area of like, I like to play with words. They're quite flexible, but there is a danger in doing that. But I will say, it's manipulation is a neutral thing, right? Like when I move this card, I'm manipulating the card, manipulating the deck, I'm just moving it around. When somebody tries to make you feel better after you've had a really bad day, right, they're manipulating your emotions. So it doesn't mean that it's unwelcome. Most of us like to be comforted after we've had a really hard day. But so like there's a way to hurt people with it, and there's a way to help people with it. And at the end of the day, like that's the mercurial nature of manipulation, right? Of figuring out, how you want to use that. But I would say if it puts you and your family at peace, it's worth just, giving that a shot if you feel like it. But so the snakes. So here we go. Okay, so deferring to each other, okay, but the last monthly chat at this time, I went from 1 snake to probably 3 if I can catch peony. I have confidence I can, but I have not yet. I left her water out, closed home door, mostly is lurking in there. Okay, and I know it's her, not my cats. I closed the door, but I also put flour down around where I put the pink. Yeah, oh, that's so clever. So that if you put the flower down, so if the snake goes through it, you'll know that it's her. That's really smart. Okay, let's see. All right, so, okay, so we're asking questions about the snakes. Okay, so is your question about your free sale? Alicia says, I have not paid for any of them. Everyone keeps giving poor Alicia snakes, but they're not giving you their money. That's what you really need, right? Okay, so, okay, so how do you want me to phrase this question? Should we ask like, let's start while you phrase the official question. Let's start by asking the Nameless One, what is the situation with Alicia vis-a-vis her snakes as you see it? What is the situation with the snakes? Oh, wow, there's a lot of snakes. Okay. This is a lot of cards for the situation, but we did just go through a lot of context, so let's just speed run it. I don't typically have like the whole thing fall out and that's the reading, but let's just go for it. So we have the tools of fate and free will. So there's some things outside of your control. There's some things within your control. You're certainly spending a lot of energy trying to get these snakes together and trying to, figure out how to manage everything. This is called the energetic flyer. It's a court card. We have the nine of coins upright. This is about financial independence. This is about trying to get things perfect, trying to be sterile, clean. This is the Venus ruled decan of the Mercury ruled sign Virgo. So Venus in Virgo is in its fall. Also, this is my placement natally. Curry's too, I believe. So, it's rough, but it concerns with like perfection, figuring out like the most optimal way to achieve beauty and pleasure, which can in and of itself kind of ruin the pleasure, but also usually has really good productive results. So that's the kind of energy we're dealing with. Trying to, to make everything be as perfect as possible is taking a lot of energy and time that is making it perhaps feel less good. Also, as you've mentioned, you got all these snakes for free, and the nine of coins is sort of one of its associations is like material independence or material luxury, material ability to like, do the Venus thing because it's Venus's decan. Then we have the disciple of the moon, so trying to figure out how to go with the flow. A snake is such a perfect creature to like have to do this with in the first place, because they are so flexible and so sneaky and hidden and unseen. So again, like, she does something and you do something else. The flower is a really good idea. So, so you're kind of trying to like roll with the punches, do what you can to the situation. But there is sort of a feeling of, I don't know, too much too fast. There's a certain rigidity, an inability to kind of like figure out how to manage all this stuff. This is the Hanged Man. And so the Hanged Man the astrological background is a little bit more complicated because originally it was associated with like the pure quintessential energy of water, but then later was overlaid Neptune on top of it because when the Rider-Waite-Smith deck came out, there was Neptune, but they didn't know about it. So it wasn't incorporated into the astrology. So after the fact, though, people looked at the Hanged Man and they said, instead of water, because that's represented by the Ace of Cups, we'll make it Neptune. I personally really like this association, so that's usually what I go with. But sometimes the Hanged Man has associations with the martyr, the mystic, the sacrifice, right? When the Hanged Man is upright, it's actually reversed, by which I mean this is the right side of the card, but if it was reversed, the fish would be on top, right? And usually the Hanged Man operates that way because it's a dude hanging, suspended. Some of the mythological associations with this card are like Jesus on the cross, or Odin hanging from the world tree, or the Buddha sacrificing material pleasure for enlightenment, right? Or experimenting with doing that, rejecting worldly pleasure. So these are the kinds of archetypes that we deal with, as well as just like when it's upright, right? This is the Hanged Man in that place of suspension, right? This is Odin hanging from the world tree before he gets the knowledge of the runes, but after he's been lanced in the side with a spear. This is like a difficult transitional thing that requires like reflection and time and a little bit of spirituality, right, to accept. This is like Jesus hanging from the cross, right, before he after he's been nailed there, but before he like returns to God or whatever. So the Hanged Man is really like this pivotal kind of transitionary phase, and in order to become enlightened, to find the benefits of that, we need to like fully embrace and accept what is, and try to find like this this perspective of like we're playing the cosmic game, right? Like we're all divine beings of pleasure and love and bliss, and we think it would be really fun if we just played this quick little RPG on Earth where we, you know, bring ourselves misery and destruction and chaos, because it's a more fun and challenging narrative, right? It's almost like when you play a video game and you do the harder thing because you think it'll be more fun and rewarding once you do it. There's like it's like a Zen trick you can kind of play with yourself when you're feeling like really, really like, what am I doing? Why is this happening? You can kind of give a little laugh, right? The proverbial witch's cackle to dispel negative energy. It's sort of like, oh, haha, silly me. I thought it would be really fun to put myself through this because what a great story. And I mean, now you get to tell everyone you've got 3 snakes that you didn't pay for, but no job, which is a fun, not no job, but you know what I mean. You're looking for jobs, but you got snakes. So it's like a fun little story, and kind of focusing on like, all right, it is going to be what it is going to be. But in the meantime, like what a fun little situation I found myself in. What a thrill. We also have the 6 of Wands is one of my favorite cards. Probably you will be successful in catching peony, I imagine. You think that you will be. The tarot thinks you will be as well. This is the Jupiter ruled decan of the zodiac sign Leo. The decan I wish my sun was actually in, but no, I got Mars. Surprise. Anyway, this is a good thing, right? This is like the ideal kind of authority king figure, right? The Jupiterian king who's like actually wants what's best for his people and is enlightened and fun and happy and nice, and not at all the martial one where you always feel like you're under attack all the time. Anyway, so this is about like acclaim, right? About reward, about being recognized as somebody who's worthy. So, you know, we're on this little journey and it's just gonna be the way it is. This is the Oracle for Powerful Magic. If you are interested in doing spell work, prayer, any kind of thing, that might help you at this time. Also, Alicia, I happen to know, because I have your chart, that you have Cancer in the 10th house, which means Jupiter is in your 10th house. And you also have a natal Mercury in the Mercury bound, I think. Let me just pull up your chart real quick. I'm going to look. Because I think I have it. Well, I know I have it, but... Yes, so you have natal Mercury in Mercury's bound and decan in the zodiac sign of Cancer, where Jupiter is currently right now. You have a very, very powerful access point to magic and mysticism. The 10th house is so strong, and Jupiter has kind of a spiritual connotation. Mercury has a very, very magician-y, or literally in tarot, it is the magician. So you do have the ability, I think earlier we got the tools of fate and free will. You do have the ability to turn fate in your favor. It's going to require a lot of action, a lot of intentional manifestation. And I kind of, sometimes that word gets really overused in like, you know, witch talk spaces, but it's true, right? Like we can actualize, we can manifest the things that we want on this plane. There are times when that is more or less difficult, right? Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's not, but right now is a good time for you. So if you participate in prayer or spell work or sigil magic or anything like that, that might really aid you. Even just the power of positive thinking, right? Understanding that you do have power in this moment to like get the results you want. So definitely go with that. This is really funny because it's literally about like, this is another oracle card. Sorry, I need more coffee. Okay, sorry. I have a couple things that I'm just are like flying into my mind because I'm looking at this, but then also this is the next card. This is like, as the kids say, lock in, like literally lock in. Sometimes the tarot gives you fun little key phrases like that. Traditionally, this is about keeping your secrets hidden, keeping your privacy maintained, keeping your what you need under lock and key, right? The ability to protect yourself from the evil eye, but also in context of like having the next card be the 3 of Pentacles, which is the Mars ruled decan of Capricorn, where it's exalted, and it's usually the tarot connotation is like working together to achieve results you couldn't imagine on your own, right? It's like every individual putting themselves in the best possible position to make the whole thing, the structure, like so grand and so lasting. The martial influence is really the ability for Mars to be like strategic and like apply his raw strength to something that is structural. Usually, I mean, they're malefics, so they don't have to be obviously good, but it can be. And when Mars is exalted, it's more likely to at least be productive or really good at it. But in terms of this, the 3 of Pentacles or coins in this case, Sometimes pentacles are referred to as coins. The Nameless One, they're coins. It's about collaboration, right? Mars rejoices in the 6th house. The 6th house is about slavery, servitude, the relationship between slaves and masters, traditionally. And so this is like, depending on your life and where you're at, your ability to either work with people, work with superiors, or to be the superior and work with employees. But either way, it's like, getting a group of people together, like an army, like a government, a group, an organization, getting them together to achieve together what one alone cannot do. One of the things that I always remember, always comes to mind with the 3 of coins, is the story of the people building the cathedral. And there's, I don't know, I forget, well, whatever. Basically the premise is, a man, sees a bunch of people building a cathedral. He goes to the bricklayer and he goes, hey, what are you doing? And the first worker says, oh, I'm, laying bricks. And they go, okay, so that guy has a job. And then he goes to the second person and he goes, hey, what are you doing? And, he's just like, I don't know, laying more bricks, doing the same thing as the first guy. And he says, I'm building a cathedral. And he says, oh, okay, this guy has a career, right? Because he understands like his part in this bigger project. He's not just laying bricks, he's building a cathedral. So then he goes to the third person and who's also laying bricks, and he goes, hey, what are you doing? And he goes, I am constructing the house of God. And so we say, this guy has a calling, right? This guy absolutely is like locked in, right? As we say, locked into what he's doing. It's not just that he's laying bricks. He is an instrumental piece in building something far grander and far more structural and superior than anyone could do on their own. And he understands like he's called to do this work. It's not just labor or servitude. It's not just, a career work to, to be known or for the recognition. It's for that higher spiritually elevated purpose. So, or elevated, or might we say exalted. So anyway, this is kind of interesting in relation to just like, we've got snakes on the one hand, but we also have this like quest for job or collaboration on the other. You do have Jupiter in your 10th, but it is receiving an overcoming square from Saturn in your 7th. So there are difficulties, but still, that's still really, really not a bad place to be, I think, particularly because Jupiter, is on the 10th. The 10th is like a good house for Jupiter to be exalted in. So I think as far as like employment, that's definitely within your grasp, but I think we're going to have to figure out, there's something about like the 7th house, right? The 7th house is the other, contracts, the partner. In my story just earlier today, now that was just a moment, that was literally the chart of a moment for one situation, as opposed to like a natal chart or a solar return chart or whatever else. But, in that position, the 7th house was literally someone I was arguing with, because it's like someone standing, the 7th house opposes the 1st house, right? It's someone you can clearly see standing, across from you. And what can you do with people that you clearly see standing across from you? You can argue with them, you can marry them, you can hate them, you can love them, right? Like there's very clear, like, I know who you are and we're having this relationship. And there are certain expectations and understandings of that kind of relationship. So even though it is oftentimes is like marriage or the partner, and I do find like when we're looking for natal inquiries, it does tend to be that. I think it can kind of be anybody who's like really, them, right? You know them on a one-to-one, and depending on the context of the situation, it could be good or bad. But anyway, so there's something about like your relationships or the people that you're dealing with one-on-one in a contractual, understood kind of a way that is somehow hindering or repressing the career. But here's the thing. Saturn's going to be in Aries for like 3 years. Jupiter's going to be in Cancer for about a year and something. I don't remember exactly how long it takes, but you will have time to work with this transit and to figure out how to get it to work for you. And all of these cards are honestly pretty positive as pertaining to your ability to manifest. So despite initial discouragements and setbacks, like definitely keep the goal in mind, right? Like don't think about the brick, think about the cathedral, think about the bigger picture, what you're being called to do. And in this way, chasing that lead, you're way more likely to be successful. Also, we have the 10 of Swords upright. So the 10 of Blades in this case. So the 10 of Blades upright is like, yeah, so we're done thinking about it because we know what needs to be done and we know how to get across from there. So we have a repeat. These guys gonna come back, but it's really nice. I think this combination, because unlike the first time where they were reversed and we were thinking like, oh, we're not done. I don't know if I actually said that. The question about Bailey, because it was reversed, it's like we're constantly thinking about the question still. Like we're unable to kill the question. We're unable to answer the question, which in Bailey's case was because, probably it's a thing that will keep flaring up and we won't really know why. We'll keep wondering and it's going to be an issue. But here it's upright. So we will have a clear resolution. It will be done. Oh, and it's a snake card. Yes, thank you. Everybody's like, snakes. Yeah, I totally didn't even think about that. The most obvious. And it's literally a snake in the hand, so you will probably find your snake. Hopefully, this is you being like exhausted, right? After all of this trial and tribulation and all this stuff, you'll be like, finally, the snake. So, yeah. So you probably will find her and you probably will be exhausted, but you'll figure it out, right? Because again, this is the Lord of Science, the method that we get from point A to point B by analyzing what we have to work with and then getting it to work for us, right? This is another interesting thing. So I didn't read this. I heard on a podcast. What is it called? Myth Matters, I think is the podcast name. And I used to listen to it a lot, or at least there was like a couple weeks where I was like really listening to a bunch of episodes, and then I haven't listened to it in a long time. But anyway, they have this episode on like the concept of the bricoleur, which is like the bricklayer, and they contextualized it with Hermes, and basically the bricoleur is this concept of a person who kind of like makes do with what they have, who like builds something out of what's just around or on hand, and it's very much a mercurial kind of archetype, right? Because literally like the mythological origin story of Mercury is he has a situation. He's part god, but his mom is afraid of Hera's wrath, as she should be, because Hera is always wrathing people. Always. So, he, is hiding in a cave and he's like, how do I get to ascend to my rightful status among the gods? And he does this very elaborate trick. He steals all of the cattle from Apollo. He puts their feet on backwards so it looks like they're going one direction, but they're going the other direction. In the meantime, Apollo is looking for his cattle. He eventually finds Hermes, and Hermes has, there's a turtle walking by. So he kills the turtle. He creates the lyre out of the turtle shell and the cat, one of the cattle that he sacrificed to the gods to earn their favor, because he's like, hey, LOL, I know Apollo's gonna be pissed, so here's a cow, help me out. Anyway, so and then using that sacrificed animal, he creates the lyre, he shows it to Apollo. Apollo is like, this is the best fucking thing ever. I'm not mad at you anymore. Take my staff. It's awesome. I want the lyre. They're like best bros. They go up to Jupiter. Jupiter's like, this is hilarious. Of course you can be the divine messenger. That's great. And it works out, right? And he ascends to his rightful place among the Olympians, and he does this by using the resources he has on hand and cleverly manipulating them to his advantage. So that's the kind of energy we want. And your natal Mercury is interacting with a transiting Jupiter. So this is absolutely the time to sacrifice your proverbial cattle and to, take a wild stab at something, really try to do what you want to do, because you probably are going to be more likely to be successful than otherwise. I mean, ideally, yes, Saturn would not be doing that whole overcoming square business, but I do believe that if we kind of are mercurial, if we're adaptable and we can figure out a way to work with that energy, we by which I mean you, should be able to figure out how to make this work for you. Who knows, right? Like maybe you'll be applying for a job, or you'll be like, consulting with a client, or, providing legal counsel for somebody who loves snakes. Maybe that's going to really benefit you. I mean, it's kind of like back in the whole this thing. It's like, this is a wild ride, you know what I mean? But I think it's going to have a good ending. You got a lot of positive, very like manifesty cards. So I think if you play your cards right, so to speak, the results should be quite good. There's nothing in here that speaks of downfall or doom or destruction in any way. Quite the opposite. So there are things in this whole layout that did say it might be hard. It might be a little bit tiring, but yeah, it's very like a run around kind of a thing. So that'll be fun. Anywho, I don't have cattle, just all these snakes. I don't think you need to sacrifice a snake. I was being more metaphorical, right? Like, but yeah. Okay, so hello. So we have one more question. So Curry, do you want me to... So Alicia says, I know, Zia. I know you know, but for the sake of complete transparency, I am not abdicating the sacrifice of any animal at any time. So whatever you or anyone else might interpret my words as being, just know I am against animal sacrifice. So, you know, there are lots of ways. And like, I just had this conversation not that long ago, but the point of a sacrifice is to show how much you want something. There are a lot of ways to show the cosmos, the universe, the gods, how committed you are to a thing, right? There's so many ways to do that. And I honestly, there's just enough bloodshed in the world. I don't think that adding to it is going to have the shock value that it might have once had. You know what I mean? I think that there's a clever way to show one's sacrifice, such as the energy exerted, you know, the time spent in ritual, in prayer, meditation, or focus. I think that like your anxieties, your worries can be the thing that you symbolically slay on the altar of the gods. You say, you know what? I'm sacrificing my insecurity to you because I know that I'm divinely aided. I'm divinely protected. I know that you have the power to turn this around for me. So I'm going to just trust that you will, you know, like there are a lot of symbolic actions I think that you can take. And I think symbol is incredibly powerful. So like, yeah, you know, by all means, if slaying goats is your thing, I'm not going to judge it. But at the same time, it is not my thing. And I think we can do other things, you know, that might be just as effective. So, or like, you know, group prayer is another thing, right? If you have a lot of people sending out these like good energies for you, or even like group prayer and group action, maybe get a couple people together to help find your snake. Maybe try to lure her out with something and then get a bunch of people around, or like, I don't know, like, I don't really know how to catch a snake, but the 3 of coins makes me think maybe collaboration is a good thing. Although to be fair, we also kind of asked about jobs and snakes. So that could also just be a job thing, or somehow maybe they go together. I don't know. So anyway, as I was saying, so Curry Star has a question about parents being disappointed in their recent activities as an astrologer. And I want to do that. That's the last thing we're going to do today because I am 27 minutes over time, but I still think it's a good question. So one of the things that I like to do when we're dealing with like a person and a person's relationship, I have this spread that I made up that I really, really, really like to do. Oh, and sorry, before I forget, let me grab the Nameless One grimoire because, oh God, this thing is so heavy. Okay. Because Nolioli had a pet-related question and about their pet's health, and I have a sigil in the back of the book. This thing is like massive, by the way. I don't know if you guys are familiar. Anyway, I have a sigil in the back of the book that specifically somebody had asked for pets, and I thought it might be useful. Let me see here. So, 1 minute while I find the pet sigil. By the way, these are all sigils in the back of the book that other people commissioned me to make. And then we voted on like the top 8 that would go into the deck. But these are the ones that didn't make it in the deck, but I still feel like they're good, so. I feel like it was one of the first ones. Positive, judgment, energy, growing souls, takes not delay, path is clear, spiritually guided in the craft, bright and healing. Oh, here it is. Okay. So, my beloved animals are safe and protected from all dangers. That was the sigil that one of my patrons of the Kickstarter Nameless One project commissioned, and it is included in the back of the Nameless One grimoire. So I'm zooming in on the sigil so you can copy it. Whoops. So what you'll do is you'll take a screenshot of the sigil, you'll copy it on another piece of paper, and you preferably will copy it in brown ink because brown is associated with like domestic labors and pets and things, but that part is, you know, more for just adding adding things is optional. Anyway, you copy the sigil on a small piece of paper. Then you have to charge the sigil. There are a ton of different ways to do this. You can rub the paper in your hands like this until it becomes really hot, really warm, and then that will be charged. You can stare at the paper and meditate over it and over what you want it to do, you know, like visualize the outcome that you want. And then once you're done charging it, when you feel like it's done, you can activate it. Now there's a bunch of different ways to activate it as well. I pretty much always burn it. I really like burning sigils. I find it to be very like cathartic, and I like looking at the embers and stuff. If you do that, obviously please use proper fire safety procedures and protocols. Anyways, but you can do it other ways as well. For example, if you wanted a more passive activation, you could like anoint it with oil. You could put it in a little pouch, and then you could hang it over, I don't know, if your dog sleeps in a kennel or something, you can hang it over their kennel. So obviously keep it out of their reach, but so that it's still around them and therefore slowly dispersing that healing energy. Or if you want the result, you could bury it is another thing. If you write it on like eco-friendly compostable materials, you can also, if you wrote it on like rice paper or something, you could dissolve it in water. So usually there is destruction of the sigil if it's an active activation. If the method is passive and the results are longer and enduring over a longer period of time, but a little bit like gradual, weaker, right? Then we would activate it passively, which is when we would, you know, put the sigil on an altar dedicated to our pets, maybe put like a picture of her with some, I don't know, dog related herbs or flowers. Like I'm sure they're like, if it was a cat, I would say like catnip, right? Something like that. Or like healing flowers, you know, lavender, chamomile, something like that. Put that around the sigil, around the altar. Every time you pass by it, you would like think about it, meditate with it once a day or whatever. So those are like some passive techniques you could use. If you want like a quick, big burst of healing energy, you're going to do something that destroys the sigil in the process, such as burning it, dissolving it. You can even, you know what you could do? If you're into those like dog treats, those really elaborate big cake dog treats, you could like carve the sigil on a treat and then feed it to her, and then her metabolizing that would be the activation for the sigil. So, you know, you get creative with it, but that's the premise of how sigils work. So go ahead and screenshot this sigil, and then you can use it at your discretion. So that's the nameless one. Let me try to put that back. Oh, it's so heavy. Oh my god. Okay. Okay. All right, sorry, that thing like threw out my arm trying to put back on my table. Anyway, it's very heavy. It's like 700 pages. Oh, and I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm just going to say it just in general. I am writing a second edition for the Nameless One grimoire, so the first editions are going to be limited in that way. I'm going to have like a different cover that I'm designing for it, and I really want to go back and add more about the decans specifically. I didn't really, like, I did include the astrological associations, and I put things like, I don't know, like Saturn in Leo for the Saturn ruled decan of Leo, because even though, yeah, the astrological associations are for the Saturn ruled decan of Leo, also whenever Saturn is in Leo, I feel like you do kind of get those vibes also, obviously even more so when it's in that decan. But also, as you've seen me use the astrology with the tarot, sometimes it's not the decan specifically. Sometimes it's like, oh, it's a Saturnian influence that's kind of Leonine like, or like, oh, it's, you know, it's what is Saturn doing? What is Leo doing? Is there an interaction? So because in tarot, it tends to be a little bit more like, I don't know, like less literal than the astrological interpretation. Like there's more kind of flexibility there. I didn't really go into it. And also, to be honest, like I thought they were cool, but I wasn't as invested in it at that time that I was writing this, like, what was it, like 4 years ago or something? Hold on. My dog needs to go out. 1 second. Okay, be free. No, not in the garbage. You garbage beast. No. Don't bug me. Anyway, so I've just like learned so much since then, and I really want to redo it. And I just, you know, it's mostly going to be similar, but I want to specifically go into the decans more. And I also want to alter some of the spells in the back. I want to include more sigils that I've done since then in the back of the book as well. There's like a couple typos here and there. So yeah, so it's time for a second edition, and I want to do that. Hopefully I'll have time for it sometime when I'm not like financially struggling. Oh my goodness. Magic. I can't play with you right now. Miss Magic. Miss Magic, give me a minute. She wants to play. She's got her toy. Drop it. Jeez, that dog. Okay. I'm going to draw some cards for Curry really quick about that situation with her parents. Just to, I mean, I already kind of said my own, I don't know, intuitive response to that, but let's see what the Nameless One thinks. Yes, the Tome 2.0. Exactly. The Tome 2.0. Okay. All right. So, the situation as we see it. So we've got the Mask of Leo reversed, the Mask of Libra reversed, the Seven of Swords upright, and the Seven of... Oh my gosh, we got this again. The Seven of Wands reversed. So already the situation as we see it is people are not seeing eye to eye. Oh my gosh, Magic, you can't be in here if you're going to chew like that, girl. Come on. Magic, stop it. Okay. Sorry about that. She gets really passionate with her chew toys. Anyway. Yeah, Magic's eating all the stuff. Yeah, she has this little like toy that is so funny. It's shaped like a beer bottle, but it's like a squishy, like squeaky toy. And she loves it. She absolutely loves it. So we throw it for her and she fetches it. And it's hilarious because it looks like she's bringing back a beer bottle. And so we always joke about her being an alcoholic because it totally looks like, and she like won't put down the bottle, right? Because she does that whole like, and she won't give it up. So we're like, Miss Magic, you need to let go of the bottle. It's ruining your family. Like all these things. Anyway, not to make light of alcoholism, but it is a very silly chew toy. Okay, so anyway, so right away we already see like a disagreement. We see a disagreement between passions and ideals. So this is the sign of Libra, ruled by Venus. It's cardinal, it's air. This is like the way we think things should be, the way we think things are good and benevolent and harmonious. And when it's reversed, it's like, well, that's not a fair expectation. It's not a fair assumption. Then we have Leo reversed, right? So this is like authentic, true, genuine self, like the ability to perform your authentic core as you see fit, as is indicated by your persona, the ability to shine and be who you are. And this is reversed too, right? Because we feel like, yeah, this is essentially the crux of the argument. Like, because of differing ideological perspectives, Curry feels like she cannot express her true, genuine passions and interests. And that's very difficult when the people we love are disappointed in us or we perceive them to be that way. So that is the situation as the Nameless One sees it. And then we have the Seven of Swords. The Seven of Swords upright is very interesting. This is the moon ruled decan of the zodiac sign Aquarius. The moon wants comfort, wants to nest. Saturn is aloof, removed, restricted, isolated. Also Saturn, in the perspective of Aquarius, is from the outsider, and literally Curry feels like an outsider in their family because their family is Christian, and for whatever reason that's not compatible with their ideologies of what it means to be a good Christian, to be an astrologer. And of course my response to this is of course it is, because astrology is for everyone. It is the tapestry of the heavens, if you will. If God didn't want you to use it, he wouldn't put it in the sky, right? Like if he didn't want you to be an astrologer, he wouldn't have made you an astrologer. I don't understand. This is part of the issue of the Christian premise that like I personally find conflict ridden, right? It's like he made it so that you're an astrologer. He gave you the gift of that insight, of that passion, of that authentic self. Why wouldn't he want you to express it, right? And also to marvel at astrology is to marvel at the divine plan. There's nothing that's intrinsically unchristian about that. And to help other people, right? To guide them to their most authentic and most productive expression using the astro weather, right? Using the God-given circumstances that they're fallen into. So I don't know, to me, it's incredibly compatible with basically every faith, all faiths. Arabic astrologers saw that. They took the Hellenistic astrology, which was taken from the Egyptian astrology, which was taken from the Babylonian astrology, right? And then that Arabic astrology also was then influenced in Europe and in Christianity. So like clearly there's no issue between religions. It's the art and practice of astrology has passed through, I don't know, countless religions probably, and it's still here. They didn't find it to be totally repulsive. To be fair, the Christians did for like a hot minute, but I don't know why. I mean, especially because like there are Jewish astrologers, there are Muslim astrologers, there are Christian astrologers in history. So it's really not limited by your faith. I mean, unless you want it to be, right? Unless this is like the ideal that you send. So, yeah. So that's unfortunate. So then we have, so the moon wants to nest, the moon wants to find comfort, but it is difficult to find comfort from the perspective of the outsider. Also, what we're dealing with is sniffing the wind, right? Figuring out like, okay, what is the best moment to assert my needs, or to say what I want, or to get comfort? How, who are the people most likely to give this to me? And how can I kind of like figure it out, right? This is one of the things, if you are in the perspective of the outsider, you understand that the entire premise, the structure of what is kind of against you. And so you have to be willing to be, you know, like the polecat or like the ferret, like you have to ferret your situation. You have to kind of weasel your way into and out of situations. You have to be alert. You have to be adaptable. You have to be willing to see like, okay, this is what it is. This is what's likely to happen. How can I maintain my comfort and my safety while navigating this terrain from the perspective of the outsider, right? That becomes increasingly more important the more removed from the safety of the structure you are. You know, more often, I mean, I can't even really think of a situation where what I'm about to say isn't true, but because I try to avoid absolutes whenever possible. I'll say the vast majority of situations. When you are, for example, an immigrant, a person who is in a foreign place, a foreign land, and you're observing the customs and cultures around you, chances are you are going to become way more aware of that country's customs, cultures, law, than the people who are born into it even, right? Because your life depends on it. Your structure, your safety depends on understanding how this new place works. And so, you know, like, for example, I went to LA for a witchy market. I would not think twice about driving into LA and going to a witchy market. But if you're a person of color, or if you're the descendant of immigrants, or if you are an immigrant yourself and you know that there are ICE raids going around trying to like disappear you from your home, you're probably really going to think twice about going to something like a public witchy market in LA, right? Now, me as a native who is unaffected by that, as far as at least for now, right? Assuming that they don't branch out and start nabbing witches, which typically, and let me remind you, history likes to lump in anybody, the outsider. It always starts with the xenophobic nationalism. It always starts with like, oh, we're getting rid of the immigrant. And then it's, you know, immigrants, gays, handicaps, witches, people of different religions or cultures, anybody who disagrees with the thing as is, right? That's like the slow slide into fascism. But anyway, doesn't matter. The point is, if you are an outsider, you probably have a really intimate understanding of what the inside actually is asking you to do, because your life might depend on it. Now, I don't really think, Curry, that your situation is that severe, but that's the kind of situation that we're dealing with, right? Like, you understand what's at stake here probably better than they do, because they've created the cultural environment as it is, and you now feel like you're outside of that culture. So that's difficult. And then we have the Seven of Wands, where before it was upright, and we're talking about really feeling that martial urge to defend yourself and your authenticness, your authenticity, your ego, right? Your persona, who you are. And we have this right under the mask of Leo, which, right, this is also a decan of Leo. This is the Mars decan of Leo, and this is the mask of Leo. So this is a matter of being true and authentic to yourself. But it is difficult, right? This is reverse. We're tempted to let them lay siege to our identities because to avoid discomfort, because we feel the outsider. So the situation is we're having trouble maintaining our boundaries. Like, I don't think that you want to be less of an astrologer because of your parents' disapproval. But I also don't think that you want to be perceived as like less welcome in your family because of your genuine interest in astrology. So there's this kind of, I don't know, double bind, I suppose, right? It's not really fair of them to ask you to abandon what is true and authentic about yourself, to lower your boundaries and let them trample all over your boundaries just because they have some weird ideological hang up of how things should be, you know? But at the same time, that there's nothing to stop them from doing that, right? It's like anyone can do whatever they want or make whatever rules they want. And it's very difficult to like deal with that. Yeah, Curry says being an immigrant, hard relate. Right, exactly. Because you would feel the pressure of assimilation, even if you choose not to participate. Even if you didn't want to assimilate, you would understand better than a native, the pressure is there, right? The expectation is there. So and the consequences of not doing that. So it's kind of one of those things, like when you're an outsider, whether you choose to assimilate and convert to what's around you, or you choose to specifically take a stance against it and remain true to yourself, you are still being more influenced by the culture than the people who just kind of accept it, right? Because they're like the fish in water. They don't even know that they're wet. They're just swimming in as it is. Versus you are like, I don't know, like the puppy swimming in the river, right? Like you understand fully that you're wet. So you understand what you're able to do or not do to maintain your comfort, your ability to survive, which is namely, yeah, you can like, be in the water, but you can't swim like a fish, right? Because that's not who you are. So and of course, maybe we should use more like I don't know, like an otter example, or like some kind of water mammal instead of a puppy dog swimming. But that's just what came to my mind. The fish is not going to be as aware of the water as something that isn't native to it. So anyway, oh, Grace says, y'all, I love this face. Aw, that's so good. We love to see it. I know Alicia is so supportive. All my followers are so awesome. And Oli Noli, I love you guys giving Curry your support. That's so awesome. That's really great. Love to see it. Anywho, so that's the situation as we see it. Now, why don't we look at advice and likely outcome? We're going to do it again because, lost my thought. I'm kind of like an over shuffler, to be honest. I think there are some people who will just pull like card after card who's on the top, but every time that I have like a vibe shift or I lose focus, I'm like, no, we're just gonna shuffle again. If the cards need to be shown, they'll be shown. So let's do some outcomes and I got this outcomes and advice. We're gonna do a couple more outcomes. Outcome. Oh, actually. Okay, I'm going to do this outcome, but then I had a better idea. So this is funny. This is about looking for hidden things. So that's really interesting, being like very observant and aware of like how things are going and like looking for hidden messages. And we're literally trying to discern like how another person is feeling or is not feeling. But the reason I stopped myself was because I just realized I wanted to do something else for this. I wanted to do the spread that I typically do with like conflict issues. So we'll just add that to the general, but I think it means you will find something that you're looking for. That's what this means. And we were looking for outcome. So you will find something. So let me just refocus a little bit. So what I usually like to do is I like to lay 3 cards for the other party's perspective, 3 cards for your perspective, 1 card for in the middle. That's like, where they connect, where the overlap is, what the discourse is. And then another card below that for like advice going forward, for like how to navigate the situation. It's actually it's based off of one of the spreads I have in the Nameless One. That's the Librian spread. It's supposed to be like the scales. But anyway, so let me do that. So we'll start with Curry's parents' perspective. Whoa. They got some perspectives, I see. Okay. I'll try to... There we go. Okay, so the perspective of parents. Now we're going to do Curry's perspective. Okay. Now we're going to do the middle ground, the advice, and the outcome. Okay. One second. Okay. So, middle ground, advice, outcome. Okay, here we go. Okay. So, that's what I want to do. So, this is Curry's parents we're looking at now. So we have the death card. Don't worry, it's not that bad, but it's just funny because it's like literally cutting strings, severing ties, transformation. Yeah, because from their perspective, you're cutting ties with what was, right? You're transformed from what they knew you to be. The expectation is it's different. And of course, Christians, in my experience, are always very concerned with death and what happens after death. So probably they're worried about cutting that connection both like, oh, you're different from how they raised you. You're have transformed into your own person that is distinctly different from them. This is the death of their control over you. Those kinds of transformations are hard to deal with. Death in and of itself, it's associated with Scorpio, first of all, in the tarot, which is relevant because Scorpio does have associations and connotations with the occult and with like the penetrated nitty gritty martial thing, right? Like the reality is they are upset because you no longer fit into this image that they've constructed of you. It's the death of who they think you are, right? Somebody else now, somebody with their own ideas, their own opinions, somebody whose opinions are occult in their mind, that are dark and mysterious, again, in their mind, in their perspective. And so, yeah, so that's part of that. Also, we have the Eight of Coins. So the Eight of Coins is about mastery. It's the sun's decan of Virgo. This is about all of the power and illumination of the sun, hyper fixated on a single point of focus. So they're very focused on this sort of like, and to me, it very feels like, okay, because it's Mercury and it's intellectual. We already got the Libra card reversed. It's very much like, there's a cat, literally, I don't know if you can see it because of the glare, but it's a black cat studying tomes. It's a very kind of, in my mind, because I made the Nameless One, this is like, oh yes, the mastery of how life works, of how to get what you want, the theory, right, behind the practice, learning, studying. And so, yeah, but also it's got in the Nameless One, because of the imagery, because tarot works both on our understanding of it and also the images on it. It's very occult. It's a very occult looking card, right? Because it's studying whatever the thing is, generally, is for the Eight of Coins. But in this case specifically, we're talking about you wanting to be an astrologer, being drawn to studying and uncovering the mysteries of the cosmos. And that's very scary and dark to people who, I guess, in their perspective, think it should all just be like, take it on faith. And it's hard for me to, I understand this is their perspective, but it is really hard for me to see astrology as something outside of the Christian faith, or is not outside, but like fundamentally incompatible with, because it is the study of God, is it not? I mean, it's literally the study of universal ebb and flow of the world. And if you want to call that the universe, or if you want to call that God, it's the study of, his plan, right? And it's hard for me to visualize, to like really embody a perspective where that truth it's not seen that way. But anyway, people have their different opinions, right? So that from their perspective, yes, there's a change, there's a study in this new weird thing. And then we have the mask of the fire mask, the gesture of fire. This is literally somebody who's playing with fire. They feel like you're playing with fire. And this is another example too that perfectly illustrates my issue with this. Okay. Let me back out. Sometimes I get too many thoughts at once. When we think of archetypes that play with fire, we're looking at Prometheus, okay? Stealing the light of the divinity, to aid mankind. We're also looking at, I don't know. We're looking at like the, how do I say this? Fire is one of the first and most necessary material benefits, tools of mankind, right? I don't exactly want to say fire is a tool. It's harnessed. They didn't create it. But the point is, mankind's mastery over fire is the basis for the entire building of civilization. And in my opinion, astrology is kind of the basis for the spiritual evolution of mankind, Christianity included. And you wouldn't get anywhere without playing with it a little bit. So yes, it's true, you can get burned playing with fire. It is also incredibly necessary for the continuation of humanity to do that, to experiment and to play and to figure it out. Prometheus, when he stole the divine fire of Zeus to aid humans and to make it so that they could live in a world that they were not well equipped to live in, having no claws or fur or crazy superpowers like most of the other animals around, understood, oh hey, humans need something else. They need the ability to recognize the divine and work with it, right? Intelligence, consciousness, the ability to predict and analyze patterns. It's not enough to just exist. They have to be able to wield the fire of divinity, right? And he knew that, and that's why he gave it to mankind. Zeus in that myth didn't want man to have that because he knew that they would become too powerful, right? He was worried that they would become like gods unto themselves. And we have seen the ways in which human consciousness has been misused, to create horrible climate crisis and war and genocide, all these things. Like, of course, knowledge can be misused, but that does not at all negate the necessity of wielding the flame, right? Because a lot of good things have come from it too. And so what this comes down to, and we haven't really gotten to the other cards yet, so I should reserve judgment, but it's helping them to understand that you are the same person. If they believe that they've raised you to be good and true and right, then the tools you use don't matter, because that's who you're going to be and that's what you're going to do. So yeah, you could be like an evil sorcerer cackling behind the scenes of like an evil dynasty, but that's not you. You know that's not you, and they should know that's not you. So I do think this is kind of like, so they see you as being different, severed from what the expectation of what you should be, of what they knew you to be, putting all of your time studying into these weird things they don't understand, and essentially playing with fire because they don't know how the divine tapestry works, and it's threatening that you might understand that a little bit better. And if it's threatening, it must be bad, right? It's this idea that like, if they don't know it, it has to be dangerous and bad. That's not true, right? There are lots of things they don't know. Anyway, there's lots of things everyone doesn't know. So in your perspective, oh, sorry, you can't see this, can you? I'll move it over a little bit. So your perspective, we get the lovely Nine of Swords. Like, losing sleep, anxiety, difficulty handling the situation. Everything is spiraling. It's like a lot to handle. You're losing sleep over it. This is the Mars ruled decan of the sign Gemini. Again, Gemini ruled by Mercury. Mercury is, mercurial, about thoughts, intellect, about the ways in which you choose or manipulate reality. You know what I mean? And, when it's reversed, we are coming down from that spiral. We're starting to kind of accept like, okay, I think I just have to figure it out. I have to move forward somehow. Sometimes it can be useful to read reversals as needing to go back to the previous card because that lesson hasn't been mastered yet. And the previous card is the 8, where we're dealing with the Jupiter ruled decan of Gemini. So we're dealing with like a lot of information, a lot of theories, possibilities, opportunities, potentials. And then Mars, the Mars ruled decan of Gemini, the 9 of Swords, is painful because we're pressured to do something, right? Mars wants action. Mars wants to do something. And so even though Jupiter is totally fine with the paradoxes of the twins of Gemini, Jupiter is like, oh, well, theoretically, yes, there's great good and there's great evil and there's, yes and no and black and white and you and me, and there's all this other stuff. And Jupiter does struggle there because he is in detriment, but he's still a benefic. So it's kind of like, I make more and bigger and spiritual and better. And Gemini is like, oh, you want more, do you? Well, I'm already, the quintessential energy of multiplication and division. So let's take 2 and then go to 4. And then before you know it, we'll be at 60 billion. That's great, right? And it's like Jupiter struggles in Gemini because he creates so much, so many opportunities, so many perspectives, so much mercurial thing that it becomes difficult to like manage, to do something with. So the 9 of Swords in that way can be like okay, let's go back to the 8 and we think about all of the different ways this could play out. And let's kind of try to pick one, pick the way that we think is best, the thing that we think we have to do, and then try to upright this energy by grabbing one of those thoughts, one of those intellectual daggers, and getting this fucking monkey off our back, right? Like just making an action, waging war against this one specific obstacle or problem. It's interesting too, because here in the 9 of Swords, I associated it with the nightmare or the night hag, which sometimes is depicted as an old woman and sometimes like a leathery demon beast, but it's basically a parasitic, an energy vampire, right? It sits on a person's chest and it creates nightmares and then feeds off their fear and is responsible for night paralysis. And in mythology, I should say folklore, there are a couple different ways you can distract the night hag or the nightmare. And this is by, for example, sprinkling salt around your bed and leaving your shoes in disorganized order under the bed and taking a broom and leaving it bristle side up next to your bed. And the reason is because the old hag has to count every single straw in the broom and sort every single grain of salt and reorganize your shoes before she can get to you and sit on your chest and give you anxiety. And I think this is a really great folkloric metaphor for how to deal with intense anxiety. You just do one thing at a time. You distract the night hag. You distract her, right? You keep her busy. It's sort of like how idle hands make for the devil's work, that whole thing. You just pick things that you can actually address, and then you handle those things. You break everything down to a small piece, which Gemini already likes, and then you just kind of stab one piece at a time, which Mars really likes. So, we're going to take on one issue at a time, and that's how we're going to resolve this. I really like the Nine of Swords because the problems indicated by it are also co-present with the solutions to it. Like Mars needs an outlet, and Gemini is about words. And if we don't express our urges, our desires, our needs, we don't do that martial thing where we say, this is me and I'm going to defend it. We're going to do that whole, where was it before? If we don't do this thing, if we don't defend our boundaries and defend our right to exist as our authentic self, what happens is those blades of Gemini, those harsh words and thoughts get turned inwards, and we end up cutting ourselves apart. Because, if we feel like we can't say, hey, mom and dad, this is unfair, you're not letting me be a genuine expression of my true self, then what happens is we internalize that and we say, hey, I'm bad because my mom and dad don't like my genuine true self, so therefore I must be evil, or it must be awful, or I have to change, or right, that aggression, that need to have a thing to hit doesn't go away. That's kind of the problem with Mars. There's only two ways it can go, outward or inward. And it can only be destructive or constructive, right? So what we need to do is figure out very specific places that we can attack strategically, right? And if we think about Mars, he's exalted in Capricorn, right? So let's think about this in a Capricornian way, right? We're going to be removed because Saturn's removed. We're going to try to be impartial because Saturn's impartial. And we're going to come up with a plan because Capricorn schemes and strategizes. And then we're going to figure out how to implement that plan, which, let's return, in our little thought game, back to the Mars ruled decan of Gemini. Once Mars has a plan and an outlet, he can be managed. You know what I mean? That's why he's exalted in Capricorn. So once we can figure that out, I think that will help a lot. Anyway, and then we have the Protector reversed. This is another oracle card I made specifically for to protect me and my loved ones. And by me, I don't mean me specifically, the person using the deck. If you go and you look in the Nameless One, oh, sorry, that's incense. How embarrassing. But if you look in the Nameless One mini book, unlike the grimoire, it's small, but it gets the job done. You can find, we can find the Eternal Protector. My loved ones and I are protected in all ways, right? So that's the quintessential energy of this card. It's reversed. We don't feel protected. We feel vulnerable. We feel like we might be the outcast, the lone wolf. This is literally a wolf skull, by the way. So again, this is a hard place to be in, right? Kept up worrying about your status and your family, feeling like the exile, feeling like the lone wolf, you're howling to the moon. And literally this card, because here's the thing I love about tarot, right? You have the card, you have the meaning, you have the astrological associations and the academic understanding of what the card's fundamental actions are. But you also get the picture. You get the visuals. It's why I think in astrology, there are so many visual depictions of the signs and the decans and stuff like that, because you need that imagery to really connect. But anyway, the point is, you're literally looking up to the stars, right? To the heavens. This is about you feeling alone, the lone wolf, because you're crying to the moon and people don't understand or see the validity in that, the beauty in that. So you feel alone with that. And astrology can be a tool for protection. If you know the astral weather is coming, then you can figure out how to brace for it, how to protect yourself and your loved ones, how to find the good in God's plan, right? So, that's a very lonely, isolating place to be. And then we have the Eight of Cups, right? So I'm sorry. I mean, it just feels like sad and stuck and, despondent and like alone. And that's sad. And I want you to know that you're not alone. And I think you're wonderful. And I think astrology is absolutely a beautiful tool of the divine that can, of course, as any tool, be used for great good and great evil. And I think you have control over that. And I think that's something that your parents maybe don't know, is that you are not some silly little girl messing around with fire. Like, you're an intelligent individual. You understand risk and reward and good and bad, and you know how to do that. Like, at least as good as well as anyone else. But anyway, the Eight of Cups is the Saturn ruled decan of the sign Pisces. And the Saturn is about limitations, boundaries. Pisces is about spirituality, faith, compassion. We're finding the limits of spiritual faith. We're finding the limits of compassion. We're also navigating the labyrinth of the unseen, intangible aspects of the world. That is what astrology is, right? It's figuring out a way to understand the intangible mechanisms of the greater picture, of the divine cosmos, seeing the interconnectedness in everything by pushing up against those boundaries, those limitations, like what it really means to delineate an astrological thing, a phenomena, is to say, okay, Saturn means this, Pisces means that. What are the labyrinthine ways and combinations in which those two energies play together, and how will it manifest in a physical reality, and how can I navigate that physical reality? That is like the point of astrology, right? At least it's one of its points. So the Eight of Cups reversed is very much feeling like you feel like you have to let go of something. Like you have to let go of your parents, or you have to let go of astrology, and you don't want to let go of either of those things. The Eight of Cups, when it's reversed, is like we can't let go, right? We don't want to. We don't want to abandon these cups. Let me pull this card up so you can see it. And again, we have the moon, looking to the moon, right? The stars, they're there. Actually, all three of these cards are about night scenes. So it's funny that we're talking about astrology, because it's literally like in the night, right? In the night. And what's another thing I was thinking about this too? During the day, I tend to my garden, and it brings me so much peace and so much love and so much joy. And at night, I cannot see my garden, but I can see the stars. And I think about astrology, and I think about how, like, there's the sun, of course, but the vast majority of astrological data is collected at night. It's about people on their own, looking up into the heavens, wondering about the divine cosmic plan, the beauty and the pitfalls within that plan, trying to deduce patterns, trying to figure out what we are, why we're here, where we're going, what it means. And I think about the beauty of this tradition that has been done for thousands of years. Our ancestors have been looking to the heavens, looking at these patterns, collecting the data so that we can have it and make use of it. And I have to say, if that's not a part of the divine plan for us to inherit this ancestral wisdom, then what the fuck is? Like, I don't know. I don't know. There's something very romantic about that, right? About being able to understand how important all of these questions are and how related they all are. Think about the houses in astrology. The questions that the ancients were asking are the same questions we are asking, right? Like, will I get married? Will I be famous? Will I be okay? Am I going to be destroyed? Will my family love me? Do I get children? Like, these are the same things that people are worried about now. And I don't know, like, that's such a point of human connection. I don't know, in my mind, what is sinful or evil is to abandon that point of connection, right? Is to pretend like we're so different from everything that's come before. We're the same. We're the latest version of this cosmic wave that has begun since the point of time meeting space. Like, I don't know, we're a part of the grand unfolding of the cosmic design. So if you're a Christian, you believe that grand unfolding is good, fundamentally, is a good, benevolent thing. You believe that God is your father, is your point of goodness and love. And so how could the unfolding of that plan be bad? And I know that and again, I'm rerouting this, my whole understanding through a Christian lens, because we are dealing with the situation of Christian parents not liking astrology. But I personally don't know if the cosmic plan is benevolent. I do think that if you're into astrology and you get into it with any real kind of, work, you'll see that it's there, that it just makes sense. Even like with this tarot, right? Like this spread is so exactly what we're going through. And there's 108 cards in the Nameless One deck, but we got these cards. So you can see that there's like stuff here, right? And if you see that, then you know that there's some kind of divine consciousness, divine plan, universal consciousness, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. There's some kind of pattern. There's something that's happening here. So that I can totally accept. The Christian philosophy is that fundamentally that unfolding is good, right? Because God is good. That's the point. I don't know that the divine consciousness is good in a way humanity can understand. I don't exactly know. I mean, maybe we're just like skin cells on the consciousness of the universe, right? Like we're good because we exist because we have to. It's not like God maybe cares about every single one of us, like you lose skin cells every day, but at the same time, you need the skin cells or you don't have skin, right? So I don't know. When I get lost thinking too much about the above, it helps me to think about below, right? To think about, okay, well, I can never understand like the grand cosmic plan. I just can't. I'm human. Humans don't have that capacity, at least not yet. But like all of the humans that have come before me, I can wonder about it and I can use what I know of reality to think about what it would be like, hyperbolically exaggerated on a cosmic scale. So I don't know. It's fine, but it's the same, right? As above, so below, right? Like we're as good as we are bad. We're as bad as we are good. Skin cells are great when they're creating skin. Skin cells are bad when they're making cancer. But the whole like thing about the world is it's this like epic, weirdly balanced thing that goes through cycles and is sometimes good and sometimes bad. And like if this example of the human body consciousness is God, it's this idea that like I do things that are bad for my body sometimes. It doesn't mean that I hate my body on like a fundamental level, right? And if I do, I don't always. But like going out in the sun without sunscreen is damaging to my body, but it doesn't mean I'm trying to punish my body by doing it. And eating fruits and vegetables are good for my body, but I don't always do that. Sometimes I eat ice cream, right? So it's not like, I don't know. My point is, it's very complicated, So it seems like one thing I might bring up to, if I had to have this discussion with Christians, I would say like, look, I don't know what is in God's plan. Why do you think you know what is in God's plan, right? Like, and if everything is included in that, then I'm doing what I'm supposed to do because I'm part of God's plan, if that is the premise we're operating under. So I don't know. I just don't want you to feel bad or like you have to let go of something. Like, I don't think you do, but well, I don't know. Let's see. So we have outcome, advice. Okay, so let's do that. So we have outcome. We have the 9 of coins reversed this time. So let me drink some water. Not water, coffee. So we have the 9 of coins reversed. So again, this is like getting really nitpicky because Virgo, getting stuck in the weeds, being dissatisfied with how things happen because it's not perfect, doesn't fall in line with that perfect structure. Again, think of this as the Venus in Virgo card, right? Because Curry, you like astrology, and this is the Venus decan of Virgo. So think of this as the quintessential Venus in Virgo. Venus has triplicity in Virgo, at least in a day chart. And she's not weak there, but she does fall into this trap of like perfection. Nothing's ever good enough. Nothing's ever pure enough. Nothing is this like perfect, pure, just fully functional operative system. You see 10,000 flaws and you don't look at the 5,000 really beautiful things because all you see is and it's not like you're looking for the problems. It's just that you want things to go as good as they possibly can, to be perfect, if you will. And so when they're not perfect, you find flaws because there are flaws in everything. And even though fully we all know perfection isn't actually achievable, as a fellow Venus in Virgo, you just kind of want to believe that it is. Like if you work hard enough, you could be perfect. If you just word things exactly the right way, you could like perfectly produce harmony and convince everyone to get along. And if you just figured out like the most optimized system or way to approach it, you could like totally get everything to click into place. And well, this card reverse is here to tell you that no, you can't. That doesn't mean that there aren't good things about it. Right. And I mean, you and we have experience working with this kind of energy. So we know that even though things are not perfect, that doesn't necessarily mean they can't be good. And we do have fate and free will reversed. So this is really funny because this is like some things you just have to let go of. They're not going to be in your control. Like at the end of the day, you can bring all of the perfect, precise points. You can have this conversation. You can, go about it 10 different ways to Sunday. But ultimately, and again, like this is okay. So these are the tools of fate, the spinning wheel, the rod, and the scissors. It's a reference to Greek mythology, but these scissors are the scissors in the death card, which we got on Curry's parents' perspective. So these cards are linked now by visual symbolism. And this is reversed. And so death is about transformation. It's about going, from one way of existing to another. In this case, because it was in their perspective, it's like the death of the person they thought you were, the death of their understanding of what it means to be, Christian in this case. And this here reversed shows me, look, you won't ever be able to fully control someone else's perspective or opinion. So at a certain point, you're going to have to release the expectation that you can change their mind. That doesn't... That's funny. Anyway, sorry, I shouldn't say that's funny, but... By the way, this is another thing I like to do. Take the whole deck and you flip it underneath, and then that's like hidden influences, and this is the Hierophant. So sacred spaces, sacred things, also Taurus. So I don't know, the hidden influence being like literally like a sacred space or how you approach the divine or whatever. Anyway, so this is the money card reversed. I don't know if you're financially like dependent on your parents or if they're aiding you in some kind of way, but like that could be a factor. So I guess, I don't know, the outcome does seem less desirable, but I think there's a way to approach this, like using the guidance of the Hierophant of Taurus, the idea that like, well, look, the way that I see sacredness or God or divinity, like I'm seeing this in the material world. I'm seeing this in the cycle of the planets and in the astrological phenomenon. Like, I think there's a way to kind of approach it where it's from this kind of like where spiritual meets material, which I think Taurus is pretty good at doing, generally speaking, because it's about, the beauty and benevolence in the material world. So, and we have this before, this conflict of like ideological stuff. So reminding like the things in the world, right? I don't know. But yeah, it seems like a difficult situation. Sorry, hold on. Let me catch up on comments before I get too much into this. We're not going to heaven together. Okay, so Curry Stereo, we're not, Christians have things about snakes. Yeah, they do have things about snakes. We're not going to heaven together, LOL. Oh, they just don't understand. There is more misconception than true understanding. Yeah, totally. They think I'm going to hell. Yeah, that's rough. Oops. Oof. Oli, I resonate profoundly. No need to apologize. Oh, yeah. Oh, you guys. I think I'm using your tarot as flashcards for memorizing the decans and their rulers. So thank you for that idea. Oh yeah, dude, honestly, using astrology and tarot together, like so super it was so helpful for my understanding of both tarot and astrology. Like it really worked really well together. Anyway, this is my favorite card so far. I've been using it as a bookmark for weeks now, so I've been meditating with that. I'm happy to see it come up. Oh, that's so funny. Which card was that? It was one of these, right? But anyway, yeah, because you get like these stalker cards, right? So it's important to notice like cards that really speak to you or that you work with a lot, that like come up with you a lot. Is that why the 9 of Coins, Lowell, is the last one? Yeah, where's the last one? Exactly. You can't focus. Yeah, that's why there's 9 coins in the Venus ruled decan in Virgo, right? Because it's like you have 9 coins, which is almost as much as you could possibly have, but you're just missing that one coin, so you're going to obsess over it forever and ever. That's very much a Venus and Virgo thing to do. But yeah, it's not a perfect collection. It's not a perfect set. It like honestly truly bugs me when things are not like a complete collection actually. So that's kind of silly, but that's funny. Oh, the one with the wolf. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So this is a protector oracle card. Well, that's good because it looks like you may need to protect yourself from some of these like spiritual baggages. And I mean, look, it is my natural proclivity to defend astrology and to argue with people over like ideological conceptions or whatever. So that's me approaching it. But here's another alternative thing. You don't have to talk about it with your parents. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are certain things, yeah, certain boundaries that can just be for you. And look, I am not a Christian. I don't think you're going to hell. However, if there is, like, let's assume for the sake of argument, okay, Christianity, 100% correct in concept. You know, there's a God, there's a heaven and a hell. Like, let's pretend that that's true. If heaven is a place for good people who do their best and try their best, astrology should in no way limit you from going there. I mean, like, I don't know. It's true I don't know you as well as, like, you know, could possibly be, but you are a good person. I don't know. Like, I've had enough interactions with you to know that you're so kind and so caring. And the fact that you even care about your parents' perception of you ultimately is kind of telling on the fact that you care about them, right? That you love them and you want their love. And that's not something that like evil assholes who go to hell to get tortured forever, like keep themselves up at night worrying over. At least not typically. So, you know, I just don't see how if you try your best and you're trying to be good, that there's some divine universal consciousness that makes categories for heaven and hell and doesn't see that like, oh, hey, you know, this is complicated and difficult, but you're trying, like, I just don't see that not counting for anything. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And especially when you're like, okay, I know that some people think the Bible is the literal word of God, but it was written by man, right? Like, we know that. We literally know it. We know that there are a bunch of stories from the Jewish Old Testament that like didn't even get included in the Old Testament as we know it. And then we know it was most people use like the King James translated Bible, which was translated from original sources anyway, which themselves were written by man, which like if we already said literally that you can't know the will of God. So the person writing the Bible, who is also a human, also doesn't know the full will of God. And then on top of that, there's thousands of years of misinterpretation. I feel like a divine intelligence who like understood what you were going through wouldn't damn you for miscommunication. Like, especially because it seems like that would be part of their whole shtick, right? Is like, and there are so many stories in the Bible, like, what's his face? Abraham sacrificing Isaac. I think I sometimes get their names mixed up. But right, the dad goes and God says you have to sacrifice your son, and he's like, oh, I don't want to, but okay, because I'm a believer, and he goes to sacrifice his son, and then the angel stops him at the last minute. And the angel literally is symbolic for your own connection to God, because angels are emissaries between humanity and God. And so it's the idea that like if your conscience tells you that something is not right, that you should not do something, even if an external source is telling you it's for God's will, don't do it, right? Like obviously you have a connection to God, to the divine, to goodness and morality and justice and all of the nice things that God is supposed to represent. And so you should pay attention to that connection that is specific for you. There are a lot of stories in the Bible like that even, you know what I mean? Like, there's this whole thing about like Moses and Aaron and like waging war against these other peoples or whatever. And they don't get into heaven because they kill people. And the 10 Commandments was like, thou shalt not kill. So it's like literally like the whole thing goes back to this whole like don't kill, don't lie, don't cheat and steal and mess with your wife and stuff like that. Like they're pretty basic rules. And then Christianity, right? They believe that the whole Old Testament thing was already washed over by Jesus, and Jesus basically sacrificed himself to erase mankind's original sin. So like it's supposed to be about forgiveness and love and like embracing, you know, the divine love of God. Like that's the whole thing that Jesus is supposed to do for people. So if you're worried about being damned because of like the way that you see or interact with divine love, like that seems not right. That seems like the moment where the angel tells Abraham not to kill his fucking kid. Like that seems like, hey, if this is how you connect to a sense of divinity and it's allowing you to do good for yourself and for others, and it's not harming other people or killing other people, that's probably like an okay thing to do. So anyway, that's that for now. I have to go because somebody's knocking at my door, but thank you guys so much for coming. I hope that helps. I'm really sorry about your situation. It seems really difficult. So I hope to see you guys next time. We have another live at 10 o'clock at night, Pacific time, the last Friday of this month. So thank you so much. And I hope to see you guys again. And it was really fun.